Hello, this is Christina Barr, and you're watching Black Tea News. Hello, everyone. This is Christina Barr of Black Tea News. And tonight, on Saturdays, haven't done it in a minute, but we like to look at some TikTok videos. And I have a special guest who is I guess, you're like the queen of conservative TikTok now, aren't you?
Oh, God, no. Absolutely not.
You're like 4,000 people away from like 1 million followers, aren't you?
That is so weird, but yeah.
You're almost there. So I think you're like the second most famous person who probably follows me. First one being probably Jenny McCartney, but
Oh gosh, I am not famous.
You're TikTok famous for sure.
Oh, it's so weird. It's very weird. I did not know. No. You told me when I first started doing TikTok, oh, you'd be at 1 million followers by 2022. Like, yeah, whatever. Anyways, moving on to the next.
You've been on here there for 2 years now. Is it 2 years now? Pretty much.
Mm-hmm. I started, I think I joined like everyone else just to watch, and then I started making my own content like August 2020. Just being goofy, mainly New Orleans, stuff, TikTok. I kind of got into the other stuff accidentally. That was never the intention.
Well, like I said, you really blew up your platform. You say things in such an elegant sort of way. By the way, if you're not aware, everyone, this is Savvy. Savvy is the guest tonight. I didn't officially say your name, but you can follow Savvy on TikTok at ThisIsSavvy. You're also on YouTube, and you have a podcast now. You think you were just kind of starting it? I think last time you were on.
Yeah, I have a podcast. I had started it last August, and then it kind of got away from me. I kind of got lost. I wasn't sure like what I wanted to do with it. And I've decided to kind of start it back up, and I'm trying to release new episodes every Friday. That was kind of by accident. By Friday, it just happened to be Friday, and I figured let's go for Friday.
Yeah, you just I didn't catch your one, but you did post one about Matt Walsh's woman documentary. What is a woman? That was pretty wild. But most things when I watched it, because I was like, man, I gotta watch it. So I actually did subscribe to like the Daily Wire so I could watch it at least for a monthly basis. But everything in it, I guess I pretty much was aware of just because I follow those circles so religiously, and a lot of that stuff I had already reported on, even like stuff about John Money and Kinsey I already knew. Which Kinsey I knew because there's this guy in my church who's so researched about, there's always like one guy, who researched the most obscure things. And he sent me like 2 documentaries on Kinsey, and he was a monster. So I knew most everything, but I watched it with my mom, and her face like throughout the whole thing was crazy. And I watched it with some of my sisters. So I think it's a must watch.
Yeah, definitely. It was, like you said, there's a lot that I already knew because I'd been following this so closely for the last couple of months. It was interesting to hear some of them say it out loud. Like, oh, you really believe what you're saying.
I'm not surprised people said it out loud, but I guess it's also like experts knowing that they're being filmed and still being able to stick to all that, because they had to know who Matt Walsh is at least a little bit, And he
I guess
submitted
not.
questions. They had to have known a little bit.
You had to have known. I'm sure he introduced himself as like, hey, I'm Matt Walsh from the Daily Wire. Before, I think a couple of months ago, even I wasn't aware of all the different commentators associated with Daily Wire. I knew about Ben Shapiro. I've known about Ben Shapiro for years. And I knew that was his baby. And I knew that Candace Owens had been picked up by the Daily Wire. And once I was like, Matt Walsh, they're like, oh, he's with the Daily Wire. It's like, oh, they got a lot going on. So I've
Mm-hmm.
gotten a little bit into all that goes on in conservative media, realizing that a lot of the people that I've been following for a very long time are attached to a lot of different news outlets. No
Mm-hmm.
idea. I just listen to people talk. I don't know where they're coming from.
Yeah, but I I assume, I don't know. I just, if someone was going to interview me for some kind of piece like that, I would just sit down and do some research. And they said he submitted some of the questions, so I don't know if a lot of people were thrown for a loop about like his end game, but I don't know how early he was filming some of that stuff compared to like when he released Johnny the Walrus versus like when he went on Dr. Phil. So to me, it was just really amazing.
I,
But
I
I
think
think it's
it's,
must watch.
yeah, I think it's because people were just so confident in what they believed in that, and probably because they've been surrounded by so many people who either already believe what they believe or don't have the courage to challenge it, that they were not prepared to defend it. They've
Yeah.
never had to defend it. They've always been able to just say whatever it is and no one has ever questioned it. And all of a sudden, this, dare I say, asshole comes along and literally challenges what they believe in and really forces them to stop and think, okay, what do I actually believe and how do I articulate it? And I always say,
Hmm.
if you're going to be passionate about something, you need to know what you're talking about. You need to be
Yeah.
able to explain it. When someone says, okay, why do you believe what you believe? Be prepared to have an answer. And they were not prepared to have an answer. And I think that was a problem.
Yeah. He did say something along those lines when he was on Dr. Phil, because he said there was like a couple who was like against it too, but they still came in and they eased it, like, we respect you, like, so they didn't come out like as adversarial sort of Matt Walsh, but I wouldn't even say he was that aggressive. He was just firm in what his point of view was, and they just weren't ready to take it as so. No one out there is asking hard questions like at all, which are very simple questions, but they just won't hold people to it, and so people are just so blindsided when you're like, do you even know, can you even define what a woman is? Do you know, how do you know what a woman is if you don't even know what it feels like, if you have no experience being a woman? Like really really basic sort of stuff. So God bless them. But yeah, if anyone's interested, Savvy did talk about her thoughts about it. I think it's really interesting that you have these people who will not review it. Rolling Stones had someone that they sent it to. Rolling Stones, I don't know if you saw this, but the person they sent it to, he didn't watch it. I guess they can track who's watching it for how long or whatever. So Matt Walsh was like, he watched it for 0%, and then the person who actually reviewed it only watched it 11%. So Matt put them on blast, and he's like, I wonder how many other movies they review and don't actually watch.
Like, what are you
So
scared of?
they call it homophobic, blah blah blah, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But it was a well made documentary. There were times I laughed out loud. I think the chicken suicide part was one of those. Does a chicken cry?
That lady really said, we don't know whether a chicken who lays an egg is a female or not. Like, ma'am, you you are so, your heels are so dug in. You know what you're saying is ridiculous
Hmm.
to the point where you're literally going to say anything just to not waver. And I think that's where a lot of them got to the point and they realized, if I answer this question honestly, then everything I say comes apart.
Yeah.
If I actually say what is a woman and give you the definition, nothing else I've said matters.
Yeah, it's just crazy. This is the path that people are so devoted going down, and there's no turning back. The White House released, since we're on the subject, I don't know if you ever saw this, but the
Mm-mm.
DHS like released this after Biden had his trans day of visibility or something, and then
Oh, I did see that. Yeah.
so they're like, this from the White House, social affirmation, and adopting the hairstyles, the clothing, and pronouns, etc. Then they go on to puberty blockers, which they're lying and saying, that woman in the video said you can just pause it like music. Um, test hormones, and then surgeries. So he said, if you are a parent and you have a trans child, and if you love them, that's what you will do for them. So that's the road that our government wants to go down, and it's very fascinating that they think January 6th committees is going to stop the wipeout in November.
I don't know if you saw, I mainly saw it on Twitter because Fox News, I believe, did not air the committee hearing. And all these other news outlets were trying to shame Fox News for not airing it. And they, you can watch it here if you want. And I'm like, that's what y'all are missing. No one wants to watch it. Okay? It's my birthday on Monday. And I have never, in the last couple of years, it's been a long time. When I travel, I never factor in gas. I never budget for gas. I don't. Because I know I'm going to have to pay for gas anyway, and it's not that big of a deal. It's like, it used to be, $20, $25 to fill up my tank. Now it's $50 to fill up my tank. Now I have to budget for gas, and I don't have to budget for gas. And now I'm like, I'm a travel bug. I like to get out the house. I don't care about J6, okay? One person died, and the person who killed her got away with it. They swept it under the rug, tried to pretend like she was this mass insurrection. She climbed through a window, okay? She was not, she was unarmed. She's the only person that died. It was literally just a bunch of people who were pissed off about an election, took their issues to the Capitol, which is where they're supposed to take their issues, right to the source, and it got out of hand. It's not that big of a deal. Why are we still talking about this a year later? It wasn't that big of a deal.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, because they think it's politically advantageous, but why not talk about how come they didn't have more security there? How come the National Guard wasn't there? Like, why didn't they talk about those sort of things? You can have preventative stuff like that, as opposed to just trying to basically say, if you vote Republican, then I think the route they're going is, if you vote Republican, then you're saying what happened on January 6th is okay, and they'll try to find Republicans who, to talk about January 6th and election and be like, aha, they're one of those weirdos. And do you support these weirdos who tried to overthrow democracy? Which I'm like, I don't think I know anyone who went inside of the Capitol. I do know people who were there that day. Now, I wouldn't have been caught dead there. I was like, you handle your grievances kind of more gracefully than that. And it kind of seemed like a trap a bit. I just wouldn't have been there. But a lot of good people.
I'm not one for protests. I don't protest. And also, it was January in DC. That's cold. I don't
it was cold, I assume. So there's that too. I just wasn't my thing. I wasn't going to go. But there's a lot of good people who are there, who waving signs like, we love Trump, want to support Trump. But a lot of them did believe that there was a way that they could legally and constitutionally look at some of the grievances, which there's legit grievances that people had about election stuff, and then, like, I don't know, at least pause for 2 weeks. That's what some of the senators or whatever, Ted Cruz and folks, were saying, and then go from there. I did not expect at all Mike Pence to do that, so I'm sorry people went there. That was never going to happen. So there are people who did not come for an insurrection. I'm pretty sure all these people who own guns would have come for an insurrection if they wanted to have an insurrection. But they didn't do that.
They left their guns at home and we're just here to protest. But insurrection. And I think the Republicans' response has been pretty spot on, because the Republicans' response is, no one cares. Inflation is up. Gas is up. Formula shortage. Now they're talking about a tampon shortage. Like, people can't buy groceries. Like, there's a whole lot of other stuff going on that affects everyday Americans. J6 was a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
It's over and done. I can't buy groceries. I mean, I can't buy groceries, but like, it shouldn't cost me $50 when it cost me $25 a year ago.
Yeah, it's up like they said 11%. I think food prices are up. Gas. When I went to the March for Life in January, and it cost me like $50, which I thought 50 was it was higher than a normal when I went there. But it was like $50 for my tank. And now I don't know what it is, because I haven't done it in a minute. But I'm sure it's like maybe like $90. Maybe it's at $100 now. I don't know. Yeah, it is.
No one cares. People don't care anymore.
Got some people in the comments saying some nice things. Hey there. Okay, well, since we're on the topic of delusional Dems, let's go ahead and move to our first video.
I'm here.
Let's see it.
Bear with me one moment. I spilled water. I need to get a towel or a really cheap blanket.
Okay. While she's attending to that really quickly, I do want to encourage you guys to go to blacktnews.com, check out different content that we have on the website, different articles that we have. You can check out different merchandise, like the I voted for President Trump, and all I got was historic peace deals, border security, energy independence. There's $2 gas under $2, tax cuts, and this lousy T-shirt. So there's that. I have a denounce white denounce white supremacy, defeat Joe Biden shirt with a list of some of those racist stuff on the back of it. And since the 4th of July is coming up, where is my really cool Frederick? There we go. The Constitution is a glorious liberty document with my man Frederick Douglass on there from the What is a Slave to What is 4th of July to a Slave, which he had enough sense to give on the 5th of July, because why would you rain on the parade? There's a lot of people who want to destroy 4th of July and make like Juneteenth like the black holiday and stuff. Like, people still believe that the Constitution was great, that the founders who were flawed were still brilliant men who cared about liberty and freedoms. And I'm really sick of people trying to divide the country. But you can check out all that stuff at blacktnews.com. So let's watch our first.
Yay, reacting to TikToks.
I will tell you why I'm proud to be so far left. Because the left side is the side of empathy. The left side is the side of love. The left side is the side where everyone has a full belly and everyone has a roof over their head. Hope that helps.
That's simple.
Empathy where? I'm confused.
I don't know. I've seen some good reactions to that. But it's funny because last year I did go to a picnic and people didn't know I was Democrat. I was Republican. I just showed up, black person. Why would you question that? I guess why would you question anyone who shows up at a picnic anyway? But that's all everybody could talk about. We are the party of empathy. Donald Trump didn't care about anyone. I'm just thinking to myself, he didn't care about his kids. He didn't care about his wife. He didn't care about like the people in the boardroom, like his friends George and folks have been with him for like years, and like nobody doesn't care for anybody. And then, but they could just get repeating that. And then we had a Democrat justice from our Michigan Supreme Court got up and said, I am so happy I'm a Democrat because we have empathy. We actually care about people. And I've never heard a Republican judge say anything that blatantly partisan before. And it was just really delusional. So when you think about so many things that people will do on the left, if you really believe that your moral superiority is that high that the other people can't even feel, I guess that can justify a lot of things that you do.
Like, define caring for people. Right now, the left is the side of, I will do whatever you want to do just to make you happy. I will say whatever you want me to say to spare your feelings. I will denounce my own convictions. Just to align with you or whatever. The left right now is the side with no spine, no backbone, no values, no foundation, no convictions, no values. I wouldn't say that left is the side of, there is no side of empathy. You have the side that doesn't care about your feelings and the side that prioritizes your feelings way too much. The right is a side of, I don't give a damn about your feelings, this is right and wrong. Mm-hmm. And the left is the side of, I know this is wrong, but your feelings.
Yeah. I think there was somebody who was I just saw a video not too long ago, it was a pro-lifer, and they were saying how we need to care for other women and do like Medicare for all and other and paid maternity leave. And I was just
Medicare
like,
sucks.
I know.
Golly, people say Medicare for all. Like, Medicare sucks.
I don't know if people realize that ultimately if you go the route with some of these plans that Democrats have, that it'll phase, their goal is to phase out private insurance as much as they can, and then you'll be stuck with what those folks have. People in Congress don't want that kind of stuff for themselves, so why would the American people want that kind of stuff?
So you will be hard pressed to find an elderly person with Medicare and just Medicare. They usually have a supplement of some kind to help cover the cost, because with private insurance, you mostly have a copay. So if I go to the doctor and it's a $15 copay, there's no copay with Medicare. It's just a coinsurance, and it's like a 20% coinsurance. Now, it's a super low deductible that goes up every year. And if you want to do Medicare for all, it's going to be a really high deductible. So you're going to be paying out of pocket in full until you hit that deductible. And then you have a 20% coinsurance. So if you have a $3,000 medication that you have to buy every month, your coinsurance is 20% of that. So you're still paying what? I don't math well. We'll just say $300. So you're
Mm-hmm.
still paying $300 out of pocket. So most people on Medicare have private insurance in addition to their Medicare. So they have a Medicare supplement. So whatever Medicare doesn't cover, hopefully the supplement covers, or they have like private insurance,
Yeah.
regular private insurance that's there to cover what Medicare doesn't cover. So you will be lucky to find someone who has Medicare and just Medicare. Usually that's someone who has money, or they have the Medicare that's like kind of like Medicaid, where they're so poor it's covered at 100%.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was also thinking, I'm just like, people don't realize, like, a lot of time people on the right be like, just be responsible, get a job, keep your legs closed, other stuff like that. And people think it's so mean. But I'm like, is it mean if the alternative is coddling people until one, they're willing to give away their freedoms so they can have comfort, and then the government, I mean, that's one thing that happened with like the minimum wage back in the day. People don't realize that it has a big tie to eugenics. And people were like Royal Meeker, he was under the Woodrow Wilson administration, and they knew that like minimum wage could lead to people getting on welfare, because the real minimum wage is $0. You can't pay somebody, you're not going to hire them. And so they knew they have a lot of minorities and stuff that would be not getting hired in, but then they could go on welfare. And it was a good thing if people were on welfare, because why have people out who may be struggling a little bit, but they're authors of their own destiny, making their families, and etc. That's bad. Like, it would be better to just give them some money, and then they're on the government teat, and then we can control them. So people don't understand, like, money from the government always comes with strings attached. So you going out there, you making your own bread, um, maybe a lot of stuff being privatized, not having a lot of help from the government. That may seem harsh, but ultimately we believe that's a good thing, that you're not under their control, but also they're learning to be responsible with your money, learning to make good decisions that ultimately will make you a better person. That's what I believe anyway.
Our country is designed for the individual to take care of themselves. That's that's how America is designed, for the individual. You are responsible for you. The government does these little things over here, but ultimately you are in control of your destiny. You decide your future. You decide how good it is, how bad it is, and it's ultimately up to you. And you have people who are too afraid to control their own lives, and they
Mm-hmm.
want government help.
Yeah. I Joe Rogan. Did you see a clip he was talking about? He used to believe in UBI, universal basic income, where they pay you maybe like $2,000 a month or something, and then you get a job that you actually want to do and that you love, and the world would be better because of rainbows and kittens and whatnot. And then he said the pandemic taught him about human nature, because he realized when people were getting unemployment and stuff, and they didn't have to go out there and work and provide for themselves, that they just didn't want to go back to work. And so he was surprised, and he talked to someone who had a restaurant, and he's like, he couldn't get people to have work, and if they would work, they would be like, well, I can't work more hours than this, because then I'll stop getting all these benefits and stuff. So he realized something about human nature, which I was glad to hear, because I thought it was stupid anyway. But looking at pandemic, I'm like, this has to debunk all that stuff, right?
Unemployment was the worst thing they did in the pandemic. Now, because the government shut down everything, absolutely unemployment. You force people out of work. The
Mm-hmm.
government should take some responsibility for that. But unemployment was way too high. Like for a lot of people, it was what, $600 a week? That's not normal unemployment.
That
You
that was like the minimum that you could get,
like you
basically.
don't. I've never made that in a regular job. I don't think it's like 600 a week without taxes. Like that's who would want to go back to work when you are making less than you did on unemployment. So now you have businesses that would never pay that much a week having to match that. So wages were going up, but for all the wrong industries.
Mm-hmm.
So wages are going up when that's forcing a lot of other things to go up because they have to compensate for the price. And then you have people who are in corporate world who worked hard to get those good salary jobs. Their wages aren't going up.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like wages were going up. They're like, look, wages are going up. Yes, in all the wrong places. I'm sorry. I understand you love your job at Target, but there's no skill in that.
Yeah.
We're not paying you because you're a valuable human being. They're paying for a skill. There's no skill in that.
People get so mad, but I used to work at Target. It's they can work you like a Hebrew slave, but it's still, it's still minimum, skill level. It's an entry level job. It's an entry level job. That was like my first, like, I mean, besides like doing stuff in the church, getting a little bit like money here and there, like that was my first like job in retail. Going, I worked the truck. You go in 4 a.m. You unload it and you stock the shelves, and then I learned how to do the back room. I didn't really learn to do the register because I didn't like it, so I avoided it like the plague. I like to avoid hours with people on it, so I didn't mind the early shift so much, but it anybody could do that job. I was a valuable team member. I worked hard until they like gave me like a 6-cent raise, and then I was like, I still worked hard, but they weren't getting full epic Christina at that point. And then I was like looking for my next job. But it's just entry level. People get so mad when you say that, and people just still expect to be paid so much more for that kind of work.
No, it's entry level. It's supposed to be your introduction to the workforce, not your place in the workforce. Unless you're trying to go up in management, that's something else entirely. It's just supposed to introduce you to the workforce, not give you a career in the workforce. That's what entry level is supposed to do. You're not supposed to live off of it. You're not supposed to raise a family off of it. Like, that's not the intention. If a high schooler can do it, you might need a new job as an adult. That's just me.
And another thing though, because again, I worked at Target. And two of my younger sisters worked at Target too. They worked at Target longer than I did. But once they heard how much they were paying at Target, they were like annoyed about the prices. I'm just like, that's another thing. Like, all these people who have been there getting paid that amount, and then people come in and they get paid way higher than what people had to work up for years to get. Like, they don't just come in and adjust and be like, you know what, you've been here a long time, so I'm gonna give you $18 because you're here, and just I gave them 15. Like, that's not what they do. They just will hire that person into that at that price. So that creates a little bit of animosity there too. So, and Target, they'll and I'm sure they're not the only company, but if you're making too much money, they'll try to phase you out, like make you quit, force you out, retire. That's what they do.
Cut your hours.
Cut your hours, just treat you like garbage until it wears you down. Unfortunately, that's how a lot of these companies work. Okay.
Hard out here, man.
It is hard out here, and I feel for a lot of people. I'm gonna embarrass you a little bit and play this video that just got an article on Steven Crowder's show for you.
Once black people get guns in this country, the gun laws will change. You can't make this shit up.
I have to ask, do some of y'all really think black people don't own guns? Like he said in his TikTok, the fastest growing demographic for gun ownership right now is black women. Those of y'all who claim to be anti-racist, like, what do you really think when you see a black person? We can't get an ID or get a driver's license. Our children can't read, write, or do math or meet the standards set for graduation. We tremble at the sight of cops, so apparently we can't have cops in our neighborhoods. And now we don't own weapons. Part of the history of being black in America is that we are resourceful as hell. If there isn't a way, we will make one. But like he said and I said, black women are the leading demographic for gun ownership right now, and Republicans aren't screaming for gun control. The majority of gun violence is perpetrated by black men, but Republicans are still not screaming for gun control. Like, you claim to not be racist, but you view us as weak. It doesn't make sense to me.
Doesn't make sense.
I've just gotten back from walking to the grocery store. I was sweating so much.
It's probably real. How hot is it down there right now?
Hot. I think it's been a little bit cool the last couple of days because it's been rainy, but it's still muggy and humid. So it really doesn't matter what the temperature is.
Oh, that sounds awful. But at least you got good food down there. That's why you said you didn't want to leave.
It's so good.
So I know the ladies at The View are aware of the fact that black women have high gun ownership because they did a story about it on The View. One of it's not Sunny, but the other black woman who's on there quite a bit. I can't think of her name, but they've
had so much turnover. I don't know who's who anymore. But it's not Joy or Whoopi. Don't ask me.
Okay, but she had a gun, like she had just purchased a gun, and so they know that black women were going out there purchasing firearms, and then they say this dumb stuff, which it seems like they're always reaching for a new level of stupid stuff that they say. Like when people wanted to get rid of Whoopi, I'm like, they're paid to say stupid stuff every day. They are meeting their agenda. They're doing what they're paid to do. If they wanted smart commentary, they just would not have those broads on there. They'd have some different folks. So um saying what she said, of course, was racist, and then the audience clapped. And I heard someone else say, I don't know if Joy's more racist or the audience.
It's just, you have to be so disconnected from complete reality, number one, to say something like that. Because, the leading demographic for gun ownership right now is Black women, Republicans. You think Republicans don't know that? You don't think gun-toting Republicans don't know who's buying weapons right now? We are so up the butt of the numbers. Like, they're obsessed with it. They love hearing about new demographics. Like, do you not understand gun nuts? Okay, they love numbers. You think they don't know? And then, like I said, like, the number one, perpetrators for gun violence is Black men. You think we don't know? We talk about it all the time. Chicago, Detroit, New Orleans. They're looking for a gunman right now. Two guys who apparently popped off like 30 or 40 shots somewhere east of here. Black guys. I mean, we know these things, and yet there's no one's screaming for gun control. If anything, they're saying, hey, more people need to purchase weapons. More people need to defend their homes. We need to arm teachers. This school in Texas is majority Hispanic, and they're saying we should arm these teachers. Hello. How could you have to be completely disconnected from reality, just living in your own echo chamber to realize just how stupid you are. That Republicans are obviously aware that Black women are buying up guns. Black men are creating majority of gun violence, and yet Republicans are still not screaming for more gun control. You have to be disconnected. And you also have to be extremely racist as hell. Because Black lady, whatever her name is, I don't even know who she is. I don't know where she came from. Sonny is sitting there giving basic facts about gun owners in America, about people who own AR-15s, basically defending them, saying these aren't crazy people. A lot of these people are ex-military, what have you, da-da-da-da-da.
Oh, no. You're talking about the other woman. Sonny's okay. Sonny's the crazy.
Sonny's the one with the curly hair, right?
Yeah.
I don't like her.
I don't like her either.
I don't like her. But other one, she's the one that was giving off basic facts about gun owners, people who own AR-15s, and Joy, instead of responding to that, apparently, I guess it was too rational of a fact for her. It was basically saying there's nothing wrong with people who own AR-15s. Joy couldn't handle that, and so what does she do? She decides to throw Black people in there, use Black people as pawns to make a point and shut down the conversation. Race, like
that.
And there's there's not going to be any consequences for it. I mean, everyone ripped into Whoopi. I don't even remember what Whoopi said. Everyone ripped into Whoopi. Whoopi got suspended for however many weeks for what she said. And I think what she said was less racist and more ignorant. That was just straight animosity, racist. That was just completely racist. And there's not going to be any consequences. And that's just sad. Like, she could literally say that on national television and nothing happens, and yet you're going to sit here and scream and cry about how racist Republicans are. Honey, you just got away with it.
Yeah.
You're permitted to be racist. You get permission to be racist.
As you said, everybody knows how many the statistics, who's having guns, and people always go out and buy more guns the more they press about taking guns. And it's such a crazy time to pitch all this stuff, because gas is up, food is high, and stuff ain't on the shelves. Crime is ridiculous, and now's the time when you want to tell people not to have guns, not to buy guns, restrict the guns.
Yeah.
I told my sister last night we were going home, I'm like, gas is getting so high. I'm surprised you don't hear news stories every day about people just like siphoning the gas out of people's tanks. And I'm like, it's probably coming.
I forget where it is. It's Isabella County somewhere. I want to say Michigan, where because of gas prices being so high, they are capped out of their fuel budget. So they're not going to be responding to every 911 call.
It's in Michigan.
Like, all of this affects police officers. We have a police shortage here in New Orleans. I mean, in New Orleans, it's dangerous. Okay, it's violent here. And we have we're short, I think it's 500 police officers, and they're projecting an even greater shortage, I think, by the end of the year. And yet you want to tell people and try to encourage them not to buy guns, you want to try to shame or scare Black people into not owning guns. They're the victims of gun violence here.
Mm-hmm.
It's just you just have to be completely disconnected. You just have to just not talk to anyone different than you, to just think what you thought and then say it out loud and then think it's okay.
Yeah, it's just devoid of reality of who's has a firearms, and then just also they have people who are Republicans that come on the show, but I mean, to her, when she heard Dr. Oz was running, she's like, he went over to the dark side. So that they just really they view it as good and evil and light and darkness, and those people who have empathy and those who don't, and your goodness is based on your empathy levels and the virtue associated with it, and that's just how they are. And it's really crazy because even if you sort of, we can disagree all we want, but it's like, let's just understand why you believe what you believe, and you can understand where I'm coming from. And maybe it's, I don't believe that universal healthcare is a bad thing because I'm evil. Maybe I just don't think it'll provide good care for people. Maybe I don't want the government that associated with your funds. Like the OSHA mandate got struck down for business employers, but it didn't get struck down for people who work at nursing homes and hospitals and stuff, because they said, well, they get Medicaid and that money from the government. So if they're tied to money to the government, then they should be able to tell you that you have to get vaccinated. So if they're saying that government funds equals we get to tell you what you do with your body, then why would you want the government to just replace your health care and then be able to have that much power over everyone else? So I'm just like suspicious, because we all agree that government is bad to a degree, and we don't trust them. You don't like it when your guy's in charge. I don't like it when your guy's in charge. So we just have a common distrust. But some people.
Can you still hear me? You froze on me.
Okay, we like cut up for a second. It was probably on my end. Okay. So it's crazy. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay.
We're not the UK. We're not Canada. Okay, our government is not those people. Our culture, our values, the way we operate as Americans, we're very different. And I need people to just understand that basic fact. It's a fact that as a people, as a nation, as a government, we are unique. We are different from the rest of the world because the number one thing we value is the individual, individualism. You direct your life, the pursuit of happiness and all that jazz. Life, what is it? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness?
Mm-hmm.
I should know that by heart. The individual. It is our right to pursue those things. The government does not provide these things for us.
Mm-hmm.
The government is not supposed to be for us, so to speak. The government is just supposed to maintain certain things on their end that we as an individual can't maintain, and then we can operate the rest. Our government is not designed, our country is not designed. We'd have to do a complete overhaul of our entire country. Hell, we'd have to do a complete overhaul of the Constitution in order for universal health care to work. Because there's nothing in the Constitution that allows the government to make healthcare decisions for individuals. It doesn't exist. And you're right, because that was pretty much a good sneak peek of what universal healthcare would look like. The government who controls money for Medicaid and Medicare. Wait, no, not Medicare, not Medicaid, Medicare. Medicaid is controlled by the state. So Medicare, basically saying, well, if you're receiving these government funds, even if it's just a small portion of your business, if you're receiving these funds, then you have to get vaccinated. Basically saying, because we have a piece of the pie in your business, you have to do what we tell you to do with your body. You have to get this thing, even if you don't need it, even if it's not good for you. And we get to decide whether or not your exemption that you're requesting is valid. It would never work, because as soon as they laid down these rules, people fought. The American people don't want it.
Yeah.
They don't want it. It would never work here. It wouldn't last long. Our
I
government
think,
is not structured for it.
yeah. Another thing, like people talk so much about like pre-K and paying for all that kind of stuff, and I'm like, I don't trust the government. But for example, the Biden administration, they did some kind of rule like the Title IX saying that your gender identity and stuff is going to be all including that. So there's something that's going in effect pretty soon. And Marco Rubio tweeted about it not too long ago, saying that because of this Biden rule, if you don't adhere to kind of this kind of gender stuff that they're pushing, it's possible that they could lose funding, even things up to like free lunch, for kids.
Okay, give me two. Let me vent for a hot second, okay? Look it. So we have Title IX and all these different civil liberties and whatnot. These things that are protected. These things are protected because they're supposed to be inherent, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your sexual orientation, that's inherent. You can't help that, whether you're
Mm-hmm.
gay, lesbian, straight, bisexual. You can't help that. You can't help your skin color, okay? You can't help that. You're either born with melanin or you're born with a little less. You can't help that. You're disabled. Well, depending on how it happens, sometimes you can help that, but it happened, and now you can't not be disabled. You can't help that. Gender identity doesn't exist. It is literally your self-perception. You are telling people that we have to adhere to someone's self-perception, which could literally change at any time. Because if you've ever followed anyone or seen any videos from someone who's non-binary, it's so interesting to kind of watch their journey with non-binary, because one day they're like, there's one girl who did a TikTok, I've seen it several times, where she did, details how her pronouns have changed over the last 12 months, how she started out as like a she, her, a they, them, a they, he, or whatever. Like every month you've changed your pronouns. You're telling me that in order for children to get fed, that the school has to adhere to someone's self-perception. That's not even logical. I don't see you the way you see you. I could go on, but
I also don't understand, like, why can't they respect the spaces of women? Like, I would not want a boy in the locker room. I'd want to change in front of other girls.
No.
So why would I want a boy in there?
And we're just gonna sit here and pretend like the physical stuff just doesn't matter. That's the problem with a lot of this is that we're ignoring reality in order to, play to someone's fantasy. Well, I believe I'm a girl. Your nutsack says different. I'm sorry. You can call yourself whatever you want. You still look like a man in a dress to me. And I can't unsee that. I understand that you feel like a woman, whatever that means. I don't even know what that means. I've been a female since the womb. Like, I don't even know what that means.
Yeah.
I understand you call yourself a girl and this is how you identify. But at the end of the day, you look like a man in a dress and you're a male in the woman's bathroom. I feel uncomfortable. I feel unsafe. I feel violated. And the fact that I can't even scream for help. There's a man in the dressing room and there's no help for me. That's so isolating.
Yeah.
And I don't understand why we have to take the brunt. Why are we being asked to make concessions? And it's not just straight women. Over in the UK, lesbians are battling for it because now they're trying to encroach on sexual orientation.
Did you see that there was a rape victim, and they like had to amend their statement because the attacker identified a different way, so they amended like the statement of the victim.
Like, he sexually violated me. I can call him whatever I want.
Not in the UK, you can, I guess.
Oh, it's ridiculous that we're literally bending the rules because people don't know who they are. You are confused about your own identity. You are going through this self-discovery, trying to figure out who you are, and power to you. Okay, I understand. That's tough. Trying to figure out who you are, trying to get to the point where you realize it really doesn't matter. But we have to go on that's the thing. You can go on whatever journey you want. You can call yourself whatever you want. The fact of the matter is you want me to come on that journey with you, and I didn't sign up for this. I didn't purchase a ticket. You can do whatever you want, but I don't understand why I have to participate.
Because they want their affirmation. It's not just a thing about tolerance. And actually, Leah Thomas did an interview with ABC, which I thought was pretty interesting. No, was it ABC? I think like I think it was Good Morning America.
Whoever they're with.
And yeah,
NBC.
so I think it's ABC. Anyway, so he said that because they asked about what do you have to say about all these girls and all your critics were saying you're still racing like way faster because of your advantages and etc. And he was like basically, well, the difference now is that I'm happy, but
who cares?
Then he was also,
and then who cares? Your happiness is not important, sir.
And then the girls, they were like, well, what about some of the things that the girls are saying about how it's unfair, etc. And he's like, well, because they had signed a letter saying we affirm, like we, you get to live the life that you want, etc. But we just don't think it's fair that Leah is swimming. And he's just like, well, how can you go along with that and say like you support me, but you don't want me on the team? And I'm like, well, obviously we know that he knows, but at the same time he has a point and kind of is explaining why I think people need to like just accept reality and not appease so much with this stuff. Because he's saying if you're going to say I'm a woman, but you're not, you don't mean it. And I was like, no, they don't mean it. They just are just scared to be honest.
Like cowards. Everyone's turned into a coward over 1% of the freaking population. I don't understand how 1% got so dang powerful. The LGBT people of old weren't even this dang powerful. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people who went through, really went through, who are a little older, who went, who are Gen Xers and stuff like that, who don't like these community mafias and stuff like that today, because a lot of these people are whiners and they're entitled and they're just like, bro, let people live their life. Like we fought to be able to live our life, and now you're making everybody enemy number one because you want to teach drag shows and other crap like that.
The NCAA, well, I don't like the NAACP either, but the NCAA, they're at fault for this, for allowing this whole thing. Well, if your estrogen levels are low enough, then here's the thing. Leah Thomas is biologically male. Leah Thomas will always be biologically male. You cannot change your sex. Sex is immutable. You can alter your body to fit the perception you have of yourself, but you've changed nothing. The whole point of transition is to trick your mind into making the dysphoria go away. That's because there's no real treatment for gender dysphoria. That's what transition is for, is literally to trick your mind into helping the dysphoria go away. And for some people, like Blair White, it works. And for a lot of people, it doesn't. And they're even more messed up because they thought it was going to make things better and it didn't. But this is it. I don't understand. So Leah Thomas is biologically male, will always be biologically male, went through male puberty, irrelevant because Leah Thomas is biologically male. We separate the sexes for a reason. Number one, safety. And two, just to give women their space. I don't care if you went through male puberty. The fact is you're male and you have a male body. And I shouldn't.
That's exposed in the locker room sometimes.
That is so, oh my God. That's traumatizing. And I hate overusing that word, but it's traumatizing. And it creates this level of fear and distrust. With, especially these are supposed to be, authority figures in your life who don't care enough about you to protect you and keep you safe. You allowed this grown man to undress and expose himself in a locker room full of women, like,
who's still apparently attracted to women as well. And then they got their therapist or whatever to talk to the girls, basically talking them into it or whatever, to be like, well, you guys have a problem, that's too bad, he's going to stay on the team. If you're really that messed up, here's some therapists to talk out your issues, but you're the guys with the problem. You got to learn to live with it.
It's like, oh, he followed the rules. He took enough estrogen. His estrogen levels. I don't understand. How is a biological male taking enough estrogen to get on the women's team, any different than like a male wrestler taking laxatives to drop weight? How is it any? You've taken estrogen, basically lowering your ability to swim to a point where you can only swim on the women's team. It's not that men are better than women. It's that men and women are built differently. And Leah Thomas didn't beat the women on that team because Leah Thomas is better because he's better. Leah Thomas beat them because he's a man.
Yeah.
And there was no one stopped to think, how does this affect other women? It was all about his feelings and his identity, and like that superseded this fantasy world that this person's living in, superseded every logical reality. And it's insane to me. It's just common sense. You're biologically male. You need to swim with the males team.
Mm-hmm.
You weren't denied anything. You weren't denied access. You decided that the access you had wasn't good enough for you. So you decided you wanted to try and make space somewhere else and then say, well, y'all need to be inclusive. No, sir, you were never included in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
You were naturally excluded because you're biologically different. You were included over here, but that wasn't good enough.
Yeah.
You wanted to be, it's like,
how come someone like Lance Armstrong, or if they identify as a winner, how come someone can't take performance enhancers? Like, how far does it go? Why does it just have to be a thing with your gender?
My thing is, if you're taking drugs of any kind that alters the way your body functions, hormones, you shouldn't be competing in sports, period. Number one, it's not fair to those on the team, and it's not safe for you.
Mm-hmm.
Because we don't know what those hormones are doing to your body. You're taking more than your body requires, more than your body needs. It has to be doing damage. You're biologically male. Your body is not supposed to have that much estrogen and so low testosterone. That balance is necessary in function the way your body function, and you have that dramatically. There has to be consequences that the medical community doesn't even know about yet. And until we know about these things, putting you in these stressful, strenuous situations doesn't seem safe. But either way, I don't understand why it's not treated like performance enhancing, because you've basically altered the way that your body functions, and it's changing the way you play your sport.
Mm-hmm.
You shouldn't be competing, period. Not because you're trans, but because you're taking medications that alters the way your body functions in your sport. That's just my opinion.
If that's a decision that someone wants to make, and that if that's what's going to make you happy, okay, but what you can do that, but why do you think you get to do that at the same time and play sports, especially the opposite gender sports where you're going to dominate and have an advantage like that? So if like, people have to make sacrifices sometimes to pursue their happiness, so why do you have to create so many victims along the way to achieve what you want, and in a way that's really not fair? So I don't understand why all these people have to jump on the bandwagon, why the coaches had to do that, why the school had to do that, other than the fact that they wanted to win. But at what expense? At what expense?
You've ruined women's swimming. You've ruined women's sports. Women shouldn't have to worry about competing against men for scholarships.
This is a crazy world. I don't understand it. Let's move on to the next video. So here's a one about some guns. We talked about guns earlier.
From America, please explain, if gun control doesn't work, why has the National Rifle Association banned anyone from taking guns into their national convention this week when Donald Trump is speaking? You know, I don't have the intellect of Albert Einstein, but I can see that something doesn't add up.
What does that have to do with the federal government? I'm confused.
I don't know.
It's the NRA. The NRA is a private organization. They can do whatever they want. They can make whatever the rules they want. It's not a gun convention. It's just a conference. If it was like a gun show, I'm sure they would allow weapons into the building, but it was just a speaking engagement conference. You know, there's no need for it. And probably wherever they were going to probably didn't even allow weapons on the premises. So
what I find interesting about questions like that, or about his particular question, was I think the answer is because they know that gun control works, but they're just not being honest what their end game is. Because there are people there who had guns. He had, Secret Service there, people who had guns to keep Trump safe. So it's not that someone won't have guns in a world where you come and you take people's guns, but there's just going to be a disproportionate amount of power somewhere. And the reason why we have our Second Amendment is because we are supposed to be able to keep the balance somewhat. But people who talk about gun control, like people said things like, oh, we need to have fees every year, like we need to have licenses. I mean, that you the insurance that you pay and all this other kind of stuff. I'm just like, you got creating these financial obstacles. You're putting obstacles from minorities or people in communities, underprivileged communities or whatever, from accessing those firearms in neighborhoods where the cops may not arrive in 5 minutes. And 5 minutes may be too late anyway. So
going back to like what 1950s, where they were basically saying if you're black and you want to vote, you have to take a test, even though you have the constitutional right to vote. Well, yeah, but you have to take this test first. It's kind of similar in that oh, we'll let you exercise your right, but you have to do this, that, and the first. Shall not infringe. Government shall not get in the way. I don't think people understand. I'm sick and tired of foreign people asking us these dumb questions. Do you even understand how the United States works, first and foremost? Do you understand how our Constitution works? Our Constitution, I've said this I don't know how many times. Our Constitution does not grant us rights. Our rights are granted by God. That is basically how it's worded in the Declaration of Independence and in the Constitution, that we have God-given inalienable rights. Our right to free speech, our right to the freedom of the press, our right to own guns, our right to due process. These are rights given to us by God. And if you ever read the Old Testament, a lot of these rights come from there. The right to a fair trial, the right due process is basically biblical. The idea that you have to, and before you can convict someone, there must be a process. That's biblical. These are God-given natural rights. Government does not give us our rights. No one gives us our God. These are God-given natural rights. Simply being born American citizens, these are our rights. The Constitution doesn't give us our rights. The Constitution tells the government, these are the rights of the American people, and you cannot step on them. So, the right of the American people to bear arms. We have the right to own weapons. The government shall not get in the way of that. That is what the Constitution says. We have the right to free speech. The government shall not get in the way of that. You have the right to say you cannot come in my home without a warrant. The government shall not violate that. Simply put. So you're talking about we should have insurance. No, that is the government getting in the way of that right. We should have yearly fees. No, that is the government getting in the way of that right, because basically you're saying, well, only if you can get this and this and this and this, then you can buy a weapon. No.
Yeah. So I got into a discussion on a live, and someone said that we need to have mental health. I'm like, I don't want crazy people getting guns, but if you know somebody crazy, you got to go to the courts and petition something like that, so they won't be able to. But you cannot have a blanket, hey, you have to pass some kind of mental check before you can buy a gun. I'm not for that kind of infringement. You got to have some kind of due process, and they just could not wrap their minds around it. I'm like, you cannot just take away someone's rights without some kind of due process. If you feel that strongly, I know some people don't think they want to. If you
mental
know
health
someone
shows up on a federal background check, but it has to be. But it's like if you're declared mentally incompetent, it's because it was declared by a judge. Due process. So it's like, oh well, this person's crazy. This person was making threats. No, that it has to go through a judge. I talked about a little bit on my podcast yesterday, just some things that we can do to, just some ideas that I think should be discussed, and one of them being like a reform of red flag laws. Now, if someone is making terroristic threats, we can't just put that on a background check. There has to be some kind of due process with evidence. This person should be able to defend themselves in a court of law. And if it's found that, hey, this person is making some kind of terroristic threat, it's possible this person should not own a weapon. How can we put that on a background check so that gun sellers have discretion when selling their weapons when these red flags show up? That's just my thing. Can we not have that conversation at the very least? Is it perfect? No. Are there flaws in that reasoning? Yes. Let's talk about it. But you cannot deny someone their right. Even mental health in a background check. Due freaking process. There is a process. You can't just say crazy, you cannot buy a gun.
Yeah. The guy in Uvalde, like, there was a self-mutilation stuff, like with cutting himself with knives in the face. But then there was like a video of him like with a bag of cats. I'm like, that is blatant serial killer stuff. And then he was violent with his ex-girlfriend, apparently, violent with women, threatening to like sexually assault women who wouldn't like him back and stuff like that.
That would have been enough to flag him and bar him from buying a weapon. That right there, domestic violence will show up on a background check. If you've had if someone had filed a restraining order against him for domestic violence, that would have stopped him from buying a weapon. Why didn't they say anything? If you have a restraining order against you regarding domestic violence, you cannot buy a gun. It's in a federal background check. you will get denied.
I don't think people know that we actually do have background checks. From conversations I hear from people, like, we need background checks. I'm like, do you not think we have checks that things pop up? It seems like people really don't know. And then people don't know that they do that at gun shows. They don't know that they do that online. But why would they, when you have the president of the United States who gets up and says that kind of garbage and just lies through his teeth about that stuff?
Like, people really think, oh, I can buy a gun online and it'll ship to my house. No, first of all, someone would steal that. I would steal that. Someone would steal that. It gets shipped to a gun store, and when you get to the gun store, you have to pass the background check. And if you don't pass the background check, well, whoopsie, you just lost $2,000.
Mm-hmm.
No refunds. Sorry. And the gun store just got new inventory.
Snacks had a Sharky Rich said, did this guy say this before COVID camps in Australia or after?
Like, Australia, I love you, okay? I love you. I would love to visit one day, but after the BS y'all have been through with COVID, I don't want to hear nothing, okay? You let the government run you ragged down there. You let them treat you like serfs, okay? We don't do that here. That's why our numbers were so damn high. It's because we are individuals.
Mm-hmm.
That is part of the American culture, is that we run our lives, and the government has to take a back seat whether they like it or not. The government can only do so much. I was trying to explain that to people during COVID, like, why don't Americans do this? Because they can't. Our government literally can't. We have this constitution that literally keeps the government in the box, and
Mm-hmm.
they cannot operate outside that box. They were given way too much permission during the pandemic. We let them slide way too much.
Yeah,
Never again.
I was really disappointed in, like, everyone. I was disappointed in Australia too. Like, I don't know. I just thought, like, more sort of rugged sort of folks would just not take it like how things were going down. I just had a different sort of perception, you know. So it was wild watching some of that stuff go down, but I was disappointed in Americans being willing to take so much stuff. Now, I think people, at least in my state, were pretty compliant at first, until the rules started getting really stupid. And that's when people started doing, like, the protest and so on. And our governor was just tyrannical. She's
our mayor was the
awful.
worst. Our mayor in New Orleans was the absolute worst. She let things go on way too long, and a lot of it had to do with money, tourism. I mean, it really just jacked up the local economy. It jacked up local morale. Crime went up exponentially. And she'll probably get reelected because it's New Orleans. The food is good. The government sucks. Don't move here.
I probably would move to New Orleans, but I haven't been there, so I'll have to maybe plan a trip and get some food.
You get suckered in with the food, and then you realize, oh, they've got roaches, lizards, termites, and terrible government.
Now, I'm not going to go to New Orleans.
I have a long list of things I wish people would have told me before I moved here. I mean, I love it here. Don't get me wrong. Love it. Love it, love it, love it. I'd never seen a termite before I moved here. I have dead termites somewhere in my room over there that I can't get to and can't clean up. No one told me about termites. No one told me roaches here were terrible. Even if your house is spick and span clean, there will be roaches in your house.
What about the lizards? Don't the lizards eat that stuff?
The lizards here suck. They're not doing their job. And lizards, at least once a week, there's a lizard somewhere in this house. And then there's 2 cats living in this house too. They suck. They need to pay rent. If you're not going to at least kill the dang lizards that come in the house, pay rent.
So they're not your cats?
No, Melon is not my cat. Melon is basically my slave master. She tells me what to do. She belongs to my roommate. You know, if something's wrong, if her, mother leaves to go to work, so she can provide food for her, that's my fault. How dare I let her mother go out of the house? If my door has been closed for too long, that's a violation. And then the other cat, Mia, she's racist. She doesn't like me. And that's kind of my fault because she's such a scaredy cat. I scare her on purpose. I mean, it's fun. I ain't got nothing else to do.
Mm-hmm. I got you. Well, I thought cats would maybe catch some of that stuff too.
No.
But
and then there's stray cats everywhere. So this city is good for stray cats. Which they do good with the population, I guess, but they need to do better. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, this is disappointing about the lizards because I don't like I'm not an animal person at all, like in the least bit. Not hug to for pets. I don't like them. Like an animated animal, sure. Like Disney and anime or something. Those are fine. Those are cool. Like real life things.
They're common, like ants. You see them all the time. All the time.
I'm not an animal person, so I wouldn't like it. But if a lizard's gonna be there, they can at least eat the bugs. So I think that's pretty messed up. Pretty messed up. I want to play a video from a pretty big TikToker. Now, there was a response. I think this is the response. She did a video and then there was a response to her and then she responded to the response. But it was essentially like people made comparisons to like My Body, My Choice, and people on the right who are just like, why can't we're going to say that with COVID? And then people try to say, no, you can't say that with COVID. That's a thing with abortion. And it's just like, why? It's bodily autonomy, dude. Either you're into it or you're not. So I want to play her response to his response, but this might be his response first. So
it has a potential to kill someone else. You don't get to say My Body, My Choice. Let's all grow up. Get vaccinated. Glad we had this talk.
This video relies on two faulty assumptions. You see, the woman in this video is
hold on. I think that this is her video. So let me play his video first.
Yeah, he's great. I enjoy him.
Yeah, he does a good job.
I see this comment a lot.
That's maybe I downloaded that twice and not the other one.
That's him. Original Mr. B, I believe. Something like that.
That is him, but okay, let's watch his response was really good, but you get the gist of what she said, so I'll just play this one.
My body, my choice. Listen to me. My body, my choice works with a uterus. The uterus is in my body, and it's my choice what I do with my body. Do you know when that statement becomes null? When your body and your choices have the potential to affect others and cause them harm. So since we're talking about COVID-19, my body, my choice doesn't work. Because if you choose not to follow any of the safety guidelines and you choose not to get vaccinated and you're a walking health hazard, your body can infect others, leave them with long-term health issues, and possibly kill them. See the difference? Let me ask you a question. Do you blow through stop signs and red lights yelling, my body, my choice? Do you yield at a pedestrian crosswalk? Or do you plow through that yelling, my body, my choice? Do you also blow through pedestrian crosswalks, telling them it's their responsibility to keep themselves safe? I'm guessing you don't. The ignorance of using my body, my choice during COVID-19 is embarrassing. When your infected body has a potential to kill someone else, you don't get to say my body, my choice. Let's all grow up. Get vaccinated. Glad we had this talk.
This video relies on two faulty assumptions. You see, the woman in this video is pro-choice when it comes to abortion, yet she's anti-choice when it comes to taking the COVID vaccine. And she tells us why. She says, my body, my choice doesn't apply to taking the vaccine because this choice has the potential to affect others and cause them harm. But that's precisely why we're against abortion. In fact, there isn't merely the potential to cause harm to another human. Every successful abortion kills an unborn human. Ironically, she's against choice when it might potentially harm, but she's for choice when it actually kills. This is a massive moral inconsistency. Now, some people can't see the inconsistency because they assume the unborn aren't human. But this is a mistaken assumption. The medical textbook, The Developing Human, says human development begins at fertilization. This highly specialized totipotent cell marked the beginning of each of us as a unique individual. How's that for following the science?
So I'm going to leave it at that. There's a little bit more, but I mean, if we keep talking, we'll have nothing to talk about because these people trashes our video. So I want to play her response to his response because she was pretty wild.
It has the potential to kill someone else. You don't get to say my body, my choice. Let's all grow up. Get vaccinated. Glad we had this talk.
This video relies on two faulty assumptions. You see, the woman in this video is pro-choice when it comes to abortion, yet she's anti-choice when it comes to taking the COVID vaccine.
Hi, Not you taking that video I made out of context and switching it around to fit your narrative. Shocker. Did I ever say I was anti-choice when it comes to the vaccines?
Yes.
No, that's just your attempt to gaslight me and to fill in words for me that I never said. What I am against is people saying my body, my choice when it comes to COVID because your choices affect other people. And when it comes to abortion, I do believe it's the woman's choice. And as a male individual, you shouldn't be telling women what to do with their bodies.
Gaslighting.
So, yeah, it is gaslighting. So I'm going to pause a little bit so we can interject here before we move on.
I don't know. I might have opinions about this one. Just insufferable. God, there's nothing more worse than an insufferable woman. Okay? I said what I said. You know, you have men who are insufferable. They're just annoying. But an insufferable woman is something completely different. You took my video. No, ma'am. He read you correctly. He read you absolutely correctly. That's basically what you said. You're for choice with respect to abortion, but when it comes to the vaccine, you should get the vaccine. You know, you're not for choice. You're against people choosing not to get the vaccine. First and foremost, are we still on this trip that somehow getting vaccinated protects you? I'm only double vaxxed, okay? That's it. I didn't get a booster. I didn't do none of that. All of my roommates are boosted. My other roommate just got over COVID. I'm the only person in this household that hasn't gotten COVID, just me and the cats. Okay, I should have gotten COVID by now and suffered. I haven't gotten it yet. And she lives literally right next door. We share an air vent, we share an AC unit, we share a closet, we share a bathroom. We share more than anyone else in the house. Everyone else in the house downstairs, they have their own AC unit, they have their own heater, they have their own bathrooms. We literally share almost everything. I should have gotten sick and I didn't. And yet everyone else in this household is more vaccinated than me. We're not going to sit here and pretend like the vaccine actually keeps you from getting sick. It doesn't. It's simply just, the vaccine only helps the person who has been vaccinated. It's supposed to lower your risk of hospitalization and death when your risk is already lower depending on your age. And I know the risk for them is super low considering I'm the second chunkiest person in the house and I'm the oldest person in the house. So they're all younger than me. They're all healthier than me. Their risk is incredibly low. She was fine. She was fine after a couple of days. She's good. She went to work, I think, yesterday. She's good. So we're not going to sit here and pretend like the vaccine actually protects you from getting sick. It doesn't. So, of course, choice matters with respect to the vaccine. If I've evaluated my risk, if I've taken account my own health, and if I'm not really all that concerned about whether or not I get hospitalized, and if I'm willing to take the risk that I might die from this, I should be able to make that choice. Because I know that even if I'm vaccinated, I can still get sick and I can still get you infected. So we're going to get off that train. At this point, it's too far into 2022 for people to still be ignorant on this basic fact. Just, and then we want to talk about first off, the whole, well, if you're a man, you shouldn't have an opinion. Who got you get pregnant on your own? I'm sorry, Virgin Mary. Who got you pregnant?
I hate when women say that. I hate when men will say that too, because men don't mean it. Because pro-choice men are
the worst.
Some of the worst.
The worst.
So disrespectful. Say some of the craziest, dumbest stuff. So they may regurgitate that, but they don't mean it because they'll say their stuff. And first of all, everyone has a First Amendment right. You can say whatever you want. Like you can't make someone do something. But if someone they can tell you what to do with your body. You can say, hey, Christine, you need to go on a diet, and I can take that advice or not. But that's your First Amendment right. You can say whatever you want. You can talk. So, but we're like, you shouldn't say that. You don't have the right to tell what a woman. Yes, he does. It's literally in the Constitution. They do.
Right is right and wrong is wrong, regardless of gender. I don't, if something's wrong, say it, call it out and say it, whether that person's female or not. A fetus is a living what is it if it's not living? Non-living things don't grow unless it's cancer, but like non-living things don't grow. They don't develop heartbeats, they don't develop organs, they don't develop fingers and toes, they don't develop brains and personalities and sentience. Non-living things don't do that. You cannot look at a fetus and an embryo and say that is a non-living thing, knowing good and well that in 9 months a whole baby is going to come out. What was it before?
And she's a registered nurse, by the way.
She's the worst. You can admit, you can be honest about what a fetus is and be pro-choice. You can, two things can, I don't, people feel like they have to be hard-lined, ignorant about basic medical, biological reality in order to stand their position. No, you can truly believe that a unborn child is a living thing, is a human being, is its own person, separate from its mother, and still believe that women have the right to decide whether or not to get abortion. Two things can't exist at once.
Mm-hmm.
The only issue is that now you're battling between believing that a woman has the right to kill a living thing and the fact that she has the right to do it. That's your own personal battle. But you can believe two different things. You don't have to say, no, that's not a living thing. No, it's not. It's just a fetus. It's just a clump of cells. You know that's not true.
Mm-hmm.
You know that's not true. You
So,
can believe that to not be true and still believe a woman has a right to choose.
so what do you think about her saying it doesn't affect anyone? Because I mean, I totally reject that notion. I push back against it all the time, but I want to know what you think about that ideology, I suppose.
It doesn't affect. It affects the woman. You want to say you're the party of empathy, yet when a woman is in her most vulnerable position, she's scared, she's unsure, she feels like she can't, your offer of empathy is, yeah, go get an abortion.
Mm-hmm.
What does an abortion do to a woman? A lot of women live with a lot of regret, depression, alcoholism, suicidal ideation, risk of breast cancer, risk of infertility. Oh, there are women who, to this day, will mark their abortion date and celebrate it like it's a birthday, remembering the child they lost, still
Mm-hmm.
grieving the life they lost, what could have been.
Mm-hmm.
That woman is in for a world of hurt. Most women are in for a world of hurt. They never get over it. They never get past it. But you want to call yourself the party of empathy. The abortion industry takes advantage of women in their vulnerability.
Yeah.
That's how they make so much money.
They couldn't
Keep the
exist.
women.
They couldn't exist without not really giving true informed consent to women. So many people talk about how they're convinced to believe that it is just a clump of cells, that it's a glob of goo no bigger than a pea. Like they really really dehumanize it as much as possible, and people don't understand the embryology even when they go in and they have the procedure done. And I mean, I've heard people go into clinics and they lie about at what point it can feel pain and other stuff like that. They ask you a question like, how are you going to take care of it? Just trying to put these doubts inside your head, and it's so demoralizing to women. It really infantilizes them, and it makes them weak. It depends on women being uninformed and weak. Like in Michigan, we have like 24-hour laws where they have to like give you information, but you don't have to read that information. And I guess maybe that's your fault for not reading it. But I'm like, what's the point of having these laws? And they don't even have to look at the information to know what's going to happen.
Yeah, there's a reason why they're against, pregnancy resource centers. There's a reason why they're against like ultrasound laws, waiting periods, informed consent, counseling, all these different requirements before you get an abortion. Not because they think, oh, it infringes on her rights. No, because it gives her the opportunity to have hope. And if she has hope, you don't make any money. That's it. It's a money-making machine. Vulnerable women are cash cows for the abortion industry. So it's not even just abortion itself that I'm like anti-abortion industry. It's the fact that they take advantage of vulnerable women when they feel like they're at their weakest, when they don't even realize they're at their strongest.
Mm-hmm.
You are about to bring life into the world. Honey, you're strong.
Mm-hmm.
The most miraculous thing that could ever happen to a human being, you are about to go through it. And you should enjoy it. You should embrace it. You should look forward to it. You shouldn't have someone in your ear telling you, no, you can't.
Yeah.
No, you can't. You're never going to make it. You're going to ruin your life. Your life is over. That's not empathy. That's the opposite. That is evil.
Yeah. And we can have empathy, obviously, for people like him and other pro-lifers. I think a lot of pro-choicers have empathy for the woman, but also empathy for the child who was killed in that act as well. But I also believe that as a society, it does great societal harm. I wrote an article on my website about it. But this idea that you can just stay out of it. Hobby Lobby, it came to Hobby Lobby's doors. Like they're like, you have to supply these kind of pills that we have like abortion type sort of effects or whatever that might I guess it was kind of like Plan B or something like that they didn't want to provide, and they had to go to the Supreme Court. Little Sisters of the Poor had to go to court twice. So people just trying to mind their business. Nobody wants you to mind the business. They want you to participate. So, and Biden wanted to get rid of religious exemptions with that stuff as well. That's what he said on the campaign trail. So there is no just mind your business. You do your life. You live. That's not what they want. They want to appeal the Hyde Amendment. So you have to pay for abortions. Your federal tax dollars go to it. Your tax dollars still go to places like Planned Parenthood. May not go directly toward that abortion, but you're keeping the lights on, all this other kind of stuff. So you can't say that these things don't affect people, especially when you have like the government buying fetal remains for experiments. You have Kamala Harris, she's in California. She protected Planned Parenthood when people like found out they were selling body parts and other stuff like that. So with so much money attached to something so vile, like, you don't think that has a huge societal impact on us in general?
It's just common sense. I mean, Planned Parenthood is just a vile, evil organization. Anyway, I don't get it. I don't understand.
And then they say black people don't have institutional power. We can't be racist because we don't have institutional power, is what they say. Our numbers are like stagnant. Black people are disproportionately impacted by abortion. So it's like, if we had more numbers, wouldn't we have more kind of social power at least? Like, so I'm going to say that doesn't impact me because apparently I got to be racist because we don't have any institutional power.
Apparently not. I mean, yeah, our numbers have been stagnant for a very long time. We should be, what are we at, like 14%? We should be way higher than 14%. Every other demographic is growing except ours. I mean, I think the white population is decreasing, and I think that's because you have more multiracial families, so less people are identifying as white. So it's starting to level and kind of even out, but you have Hispanics are growing, Asians are growing. The black community, we've been here the freaking longest next to European descendant Americans. Our numbers should be huge. I mean, if you look at the way the black population grew from the Revolutionary War to the Civil War, it makes you ask questions. Why haven't our numbers exploded the way they should have? I don't know. It makes me question, but I think abortion has a lot to do with it.
I'm gonna go back to. I'm gonna play a little bit more of her video, which I don't believe she ends up addressing his point that the baby is alive at all in the video. I think she totally.
A man came at her throat and she couldn't handle it. That's anyways, roll tape.
See, my choice to have an abortion doesn't affect you. My choice to have an abortion doesn't cause a global pandemic. The topics are separate. And that was the sole purpose of that video, but you seem to miss the point. And when was your last trip to foster care? When was the last time you adopted a child? Oh, that's right, because you're pro-birth.
Do I need to pause it?
No, keep going.
But who cares what happens to him after that, right? That's called hypocrisy. Let's see where else you went wrong.
She assumes taking the vaccine protects others from harm. But where's the evidence for that?
The evidence is literally everywhere. You just have to try harder to find it. Sir, we've been making vaccines since the 1700s. I think we know how they work. When too many people forego vaccinations and we don't reach a certain threshold for protection, that's when disease outbreak occurs. I mean, seriously, it's not that hard. When's the last time you had smallpox? So yeah, higher vaccination rates provide protection for communities. But go on.
Look, I'm vaccinated, but if I get COVID, can I still spread the virus? Well, according to the CDC, anyone with Omicron infection can spread the virus to others, even if they're vaccinated.
Yeah, it's called layers of protection. Now, if you remember correctly, these vaccines were developed before the highly contagious variants of Delta and Omicron. And while if you understand basic science, these variants exist because of the low vaccination rates. Because when viruses can continue to infect and thrive in communities, it mutates and creates variants. Some variants don't matter. Other variants are highly contagious and cause problems, such as what we're seeing right now. So yeah, when you're fully vaccinated and boosted, and then you add the other layers of protection such as mask wearing, social distancing, hand washing, etc., then you're going to be less likely to spread this virus. But you ignored all of that to fit your narrative again. Listen, I'm not going to continue explaining this to you because with all due respect, sir, you don't get to tell women they can't have an abortion. That doesn't affect you. And it also doesn't affect large communities or worldwide populations. The statement, my body, my choice, does not apply to COVID, period. And for you to compare the two just shows your ignorance. So with all due respect, sir, stop commenting on subjects that don't concern you. Okay, this was so much fun. Glad we had this talk.
I'm gonna be quiet. You're a Christian and so am I. Okay, first and foremost, I am so sick of tired. What does foster care have to do with the abortion debate? Any woman that decides to carry her baby to term and it says, you know what, adoption, They don't go to foster care. They go straight to adoption. It is the quickest adoption process, newborn adoption. If a baby goes into foster care, so I don't know if you follow, like, his name's Michael Quintock. I didn't know that's really his last name. I think he's getting a lot of heat right now just for some BS that has nothing to do with him really. But he has his great nephews whom he adopted through foster care, and then a baby girl, Alicia, whom he adopted through foster care. She's a year old. He adopted her through foster care. Her situation was a little bit different in that her mother gave her up at birth, but because of the situation, it wasn't like, a direct adoption. She went into foster care, but he picked her up, took her home. She was adopted 7 months later. Unlike a woman who has an adoption plan prior to birth, baby is adopted officially like days later.
Yeah.
So I don't understand why we're talking about foster care with respect to abortion. What are you trying to say? That these children don't have the right to live? That they should have been killed in the womb? That their lives are so horrible that they're better off dead? Like, do you understand what an abortion is? An abortion is the killing of an unborn child. An abortion is preventing an unborn child from growing, from becoming a whole person. You're basically cutting that child's life in half. Are you saying that that's what why are you bringing these are real people? Okay, these aren't just pawns. They're not just figures of speech. It's like when people want to talk about rape victims. What about women who've been raped? These people actually exist. There are women who have conceived in rape. There are children who were conceived in rape. They exist and their life has value. Using them for pawns in your argument, it's heartless. What are you trying to say? That children in foster care are better off dead? Yeah. Are you serious? And then what are you talking about? The majority of people who are adopting and who are fostering are conservative pro-life Christians. That's the market for parents waiting to adopt and people wanting to get into foster care. Pro-life conservative Christians dominate that market. There are more people waiting to adopt than babies being born. I think it's like 11-1. Parents waiting versus a newborn. For every one newborn, there are 11 couples waiting to adopt a newborn.
Yeah, I have a cousin who we were out to dinner for my birthday last night, and he works for the state for foster care, and so I told him how people would bring it up all the time, and he was just kind of flabbergasted. So he's not really too much into politics. We'll go to like an event or two or whatever if he would get invited, but so he's not aware of like those sort of talking points, but being in that world, he's just didn't compute because that's not how it is. And so I guess a lot of people just are maybe unaware of the process, but it's such a big talking point, has been now. Shouldn't something have like this been debunked a bit? But it just shows that people are using it as a talking point and aren't really aware of what actually happens. And everybody's life has value. And even if you're never adopted in foster care and you age out of it and had issue after issue going to house to home and whatever, you can still make the best life for yourself possible. And even if it's mediocre, even if it's garbage, it's still your life. And no one has the right to just snuff it out of you. So it's really bizarre that she mentioned it. I hate that she brought up like he's a man, like how dare he, etc. Blah blah blah. We already talked about that.
And then her ignorance on just vaccines in general. Have you ever gotten what? This is not the smallpox vaccine, okay? The smallpox vaccine uses like a dead version of the smallpox virus, and that is what's used to prevent you from. A smallpox vaccine literally prevents you from getting smallpox. If you get it, it is so mild, it's non-consequential. The same thing with polio vaccines or the chickenpox vaccine, hepatitis. These are vaccines that are literally designed to prevent you from getting sick, and by virtue of preventing the virus from spreading, it eradicates it. The COVID vaccine doesn't do that.
She mentioned herd immunity. I'm like, people were trying to achieve a natural herd immunity. There was thousands of epidemiologists in like November 2020 who wrote the Great Barrington Declaration. I don't know if you saw that, but who said we should try to just we should protect our elderly. Those people are most vulnerable, but try to live life as normally as possible. Don't shut down the world, etc. And so I didn't see that, I believe, when it first came out, but when I learned about it later, I felt validated. Not that I need someone to validate me, but that's basically my opinion. I'm like, prolonging the virus or slowing the spread, slowing the spread means prolong the virus, right? Like, it still isn't still going to be out there, the boogeyman out there somewhere. So I'm like, why not try to live through it and not cause all these problems that we're seeing now? Inflation is just not Biden's fault. Like, we as a country are like, yes, print more money, give it to us, please. Like, the chain supply messed up, all that kind of stuff. Like, people could predict that some of this was going to happen, but yet there are people who are willing to make it worse for political gain, I can only assume.
There is no eradicating COVID. It's not going anywhere. One of the things about COVID is that it's found in animal species and in humans. And when you have that cross species, there's no way to vaccinate it away. Mm-hmm. You can't get rid of it. And the fact of the way that COVID mutates, it's just not going to happen. The best thing we can hope for, one, is for enough people to get it to the point where we're all carrying antibodies. And two, it just mutates to a weaker version of itself, which is what Omicron was supposed to be. Well, is really. Mm-hmm. Has there even been a new variant?
After Omicron? No, Omicron was like the one, because they skipped one that was like G or something, or Zhai, and it was spelled the same way as the Chinese president. So they
skipped, and they were like, we don't want to create racist or something like that. It was so stupid.
Like, but so yeah, the Omicron virus is off of politics.
The Omicron wave was the dumbest thing in the world, because there was a whole panic about it in the US when South Africa went through it, and we pretty much were able to see kind of what Omicron did, and that there was a high peak and then it fell really quickly, and then everyone's like, oh my God, Omicron, everyone needs to do this. Like, y'all, everyone's gonna get sick and then it's gonna fall, like, and that's what happened. But there's this is not the smallpox vaccine. This is not polio. This is not the same type of virus. This is more like the flu. You can't, the COVID vaccine works more like the flu. It's more of a therapeutic than an actual vaccine. It's the hope. The hope is that it prevents you from getting COVID, but it doesn't. It just, should you get COVID, you have a better chance of fighting it off. I think it's 60% is the rate for the flu vaccine, and it only lasts every, I think it's 6 to 8 months is the shelf life of a flu vaccine, and that's why you have to get it every year. And that's pretty much where we're at with the COVID vaccine, with all these different boosters. I think we're on the 4th booster now, because they had the 3rd booster earlier this year, and then or late last year, and then they just announced not too long ago a 4th booster, but mainly for the elderly and people who are high risk. All of my roommates got COVID right after they got the 3rd booster. All of them. Everyone was good up until right after they got the 3rd booster. That's when they got COVID. So, talking about staying boosted will prevent, ma'am.
They shifted their narrative to, you won't get as sick as you could get if you have it. But I mean, there have been people who were very sick after taking it, and then there have been people who died. So if you believe in the principle of bodily autonomy, either you do or you don't. That's really what the body my choice argument is, because people will have it when it comes to, even though bodily autonomy is about you making decisions about your life and your future, and abortion involves 2 lives, at least 2, if you're not including the man and stuff. It's just you and at least the baby. The baby has a body, the baby is alive. So I don't even consider really a bodily autonomy issue. I understand that it's in you and it's uncomfortable and it's going to sit on your pelvis and all this other kind of stuff. We can have that discussion, but I'm not going to pretend like I cannot have a conversation with someone about abortion if they're just going to totally ignore the humanity and the child that was not relevant at all. I can't do that. And I will not let people do that to me. But COVID, I understand you can spread it to people, and the spread is high, and someone could unlikely die. The rate of how that happens depends on how many comorbidities and stuff that they have, but that's, you're talking about a possibility versus a deliberate action to end someone's life. So it doesn't make sense, but definitely doesn't make sense that people are like bodily autonomy with abortion, but they can't grasp that people still had bodily autonomy outside of it. And that's because they don't actually agree with that. Like, they don't agree with.
And that's her problem, is her entire argument is based on bodily autonomy. And that's where it gets torn to pieces. Well, oh, bodily autonomy for abortion. What about for the vaccine? Believe in bodily, because she's like, they're not comparable. No one's comparing abortion to the vaccine, sweetie. They're talking about your
Well, she
argument
did
that it's
originally.
based on.
She
Yeah,
did originally. It's what we responded
like
to.
we
And
know
then
they're not the same, but you're sitting there screaming, well, you have the right to make decisions about your own body. It's like, okay, well, what about the vaccine? They're not challenging whether or not you agree with the vaccine or not. They're challenging how strong your belief is in bodily autonomy. It's like, okay, how should I really take you seriously? And she missed it. She failed. She absolutely failed.
But most of these
Which is why she came off so harsh. She failed.
Yeah.
She knew she failed, and she decided, I'm going to insult this man and try to make myself look victorious. And she came off just looking like a complete wench. Sorry.
Most of these people don't pass that test anyway. Like, COVID is a good question to ask. And some people are like, well, I believe people can do whatever they want. I'm just like, oh, but y'all didn't bring that same kind of energy. Y'all are willing to let the government force people out of work and stuff. And maybe you didn't like it a little bit, but you're not going and commenting people's videos and stuff like you are with abortion. So you're not bringing that same kind of energy. So let's not pretend like you are. But what about people's labor? Like, what I produce with my labor that does not include my bodily autonomy in some kind of way. When they want the free healthcare and college and all that stuff paid for by somebody else. Victoria Hammond did a debate with Michael Knowles. I don't know if you saw that, but
Bits and pieces. I'm like, I can't watch a murder. That was wrong.
she mentioned bodily autonomy, but she said excluding like labor or something. I don't think she said labor, but basically stuff along the lines of like the energy you output or something like that. And I'm just like, and he kind of let that go. And I'm like, hey, why? why are you excluding that? Because if you include it, then all the things that you advocate for, suddenly you can't get those things for free because you don't actually believe in bodily autonomy.
You don't have a right to someone's labor. If you want food, then grow it. You want free food, grow it yourself. You want free health care, become a witch doctor. I don't know what to tell you. Like, you don't have a right to someone's labor. You want to be educated, go to the library and educate yourself. You don't have, someone, it gets paid to teach you. You don't have a right to somebody's labor. Okay. No, nothing's free. As the prophet, the Joker, once said, if you're good at something, never do it for free.
Mm-hmm. Did you see the video from the guy running against Rand Paul in Kentucky with the noose? Did you see that?
Yeah. It doesn't. Okay, this isn't. That would have been, that would have been effective, I think, maybe in the 90s, because we had a lot of racially charged films in the 90s. You had Mississippi Burning, which I think was like late 80s, A Time to Kill, Rosewood, Ghost of Mississippi. Like, so you had a lot of racially charged films that came out in the 90s. I don't know what was most special about the 90s, but that's when a lot of them came out. And so a lot of that imagery was very prevalent. I think it would have been more effective then because it would have been in the consciousness of America. No one's getting lynched, okay? What do you know? Okay, I have family members who were lynched. Okay, we all probably have family members who were lynched. Some who were lynched unjustly, and some who probably deserved it. But you don't know anything about being lynched, sir. I have a lot of thoughts.
I saw that. I did it like a whole day. Like, my whole program was like, I didn't mean it to be my whole thing, but I just had so many thoughts about it. For those of you who don't know, the black guy running against Rand Paul, and he says in his video he's the first like black person the Democrats have nominated. So I think that's interesting commentary. But he talks about nooses and hangings or whatever, and he literally puts a noose around his neck in his video, and he tries to say we've come a long way. But then there's Rand Paul, and Rand Paul is like the worst person to do this stuff with. I mean, he's the one who did the Breonna Taylor act or tried to get it passed or whatever, where they couldn't do the no-knock warrants, yet they still attacked him at the RNC convention outside. This man's been shot at the ballpark. His crazy neighbor had to put him in the hospital. This man has been harmed for defending the Constitution.
He's been through it. He's not the one. He plays no. Okay, Rand Paul is not the one. He is at the age where he gives 0 Fs. Okay, he's been through it. Like you said, he's been shot at. He's been screamed at. He has fought for a lot of the things that he claims that he would be fighting for. This is not. You are out of your league, sir. You have nothing of value to say. Nothing of value to offer. No change for the state of Kentucky in the Senate. The best you can do is bring up relics of the past, and Trump somehow scare and shame Black people into voting for you. Sir, are we that weak? It's something else when, the fox is in the hen house. When our own people are basically saying we're weak-minded and we're easily manipulated and we're so gullible that you can basically scare us into submission. We're still on the plantation, apparently, except the slave drivers look like us.
Mr. Stevens. There's Stevens. I brought that up. It made me think of it because in the video he talked about Rand Paul, because he accused Rand Paul of, he's like, he compared expansion of healthcare to slavery. And I'm like, how can you represent his position so egregiously? And expansion of healthcare is like, government run healthcare is what he's actually trying to do. And Rand Paul's position is a position of most libertarians and conservatives who say you do not have a right to healthcare. It is a commodity. You have to pay. Doctors need to be paid. Nurses need to be paid. He's actually like in the medical field. And he's like, you're not entitled to my labor. I have to be compensated for my work. So healthcare is not a right. It's just not. I know it is in other countries. It's not a right here. It's not something you're born with. You have a right to pursue happiness, all the other kind of stuff you do, but you do not come with a God-given right born with a doctor attached to your hip with all this knowledge. They have to go to school. They have to pay a huge insurance when they practice that kind of stuff, because they get sued up the wazoo if something goes bad. So it's just a lot of years, a lot of practicing medicine. And people wouldn't say that nurses and doctors don't deserve to be paid. So they don't believe the stuff should be free. They just don't want to pony up the dough.
Right. I mean, if you want to have a conversation about, reforming the cost of healthcare, or, transparency because of the way they charge and coding and how things are, because they charge you for every little thing. If a bar of soap, stuff like that. We can talk about reform for that and the way things are charged. Does this thing really need to cost that much? Like, we can have those conversations. But you're right. You don't have a right to someone's labor. A doctor that went to 8 years of school plus residency, and then whatever else comes after that. I'm not caught up on my Grey's Anatomy. Internships, like, they know you pay them for that. A nurse who went through nursing school, like, it's egregious. I heard a noise. It's a lot of work. It's stressful. You need to get paid for that. And then you want to talk about how the government is going to, the government should take care of it. Then ain't nobody getting paid. There's not enough money to pay all the doctors in this country. There's not enough money to fairly pay all of the nurses the money that they're owed for the services that they do. And then you have to take in all the techs, the CNAs, anesthesiologists, all the other people. And there's not enough money to pay these people what they are owed for the services that they do. Our government is not equipped or designed for that. I don't think people are looking at all these other countries like Canada and the UK. We are not them. Our governments were specifically designed to be as different from them as possible. Yeah. That's why we fought a whole war, because we did not like the way they were governing. And our founders literally fought tooth and nail for days, weeks, over the formation of the United States government. And the whole point was to get it as far away from being like England as possible. So whatever it is you're wanting, then, well, England does it, Australia does it. It'll never work here.
Yeah. Our population is huge. Like, going back to the gun thing with Australians talking about, it was like, dude, you're like obviously not connected to like Mexico where they'll have like guns come in. I mean,
You're
Obama and them
island.
had the Fast and Furious stuff where they didn't even track those guns and they gave it to like the cartel, and they don't want to secure our borders and they want this drug. Maybe I don't know. Maybe they do want this stuff coming in, but this stuff is coming in and they're not stopping the flow of it or people coming in. And some of these people, I don't know how many people are actually on the terrorist watch list and stuff that actually are coming through from everywhere, not just Mexico. They're coming from everywhere, and they don't control the borders. So if they're controlling the borders that way, how are they going to stop the guns from coming in and the drugs and the criminals and all the other kind of stuff? So there's people who are going to have guns, as I said, when they do gun control, but what they're actually trying to control is our freedoms, because they don't want people to have any sort of real independence. The same reason why they want gun controls, the same reason why people are scared about Elon Musk owning Twitter, same reason why Biden had the disinformation board that they tried to do, the same reason why the White House coordinated with the National School Board Association to write a letter to the Justice Department trying to get them to use the Patriot Act on concerned parents. They do not want a strong population of independent people. They want people they can control, period.
They gave, the pandemic was the absolute worst thing for the school system on so many levels. Number one, so many children were basically left behind.
Mm-hmm.
And two, parents got a peek behind the curtain and remembered that they were parents and that they come first and that it's their job to take care of their children and that their children were not being taken care of properly during those 6 hours of school. So now you've got angry parents who are, asserting their rights. But that's a whole separate conversation.
Yeah, so that dude, there was two other things he said about Rand Paul. I can't think off the top of my head, but all of them were stupid and just such a mischaracterization of Rand Paul, who was like, I remember like the 2016 debate. It was and he said something. He's complaining. He wanted I don't know about all drugs decriminalized, but he's talking about these. He doesn't. I mean, he's more libertarian minded, and they don't believe really that they believe it's a victimless crime. I don't know if he would go as far as saying all that. I do not believe it's a victimless crime. Maybe they don't know enough crackheads in their life, but I don't think it's a victimless crime, whatever. But he was talking about how there's people in low income communities or stuff that are being arrested and stuff, and they're doing drugs. He's like, but they're doing the same stuff in these high neighborhoods too. And so his thing was like, I guess they're picking so much on them and not everybody else. I'm just like, my philosophy when I heard him respond to that, I was just like, okay, sounds like y'all need to just arrest more people. That was my response. But his response was just like, let's have less kind of government tyranny actually arresting people. So he's just the wrong person to play that race card with. He's just it was so disgusting. I don't like Kamala Harris and Cory Booker because they're so theatrical, they're so disingenuous, and especially Kamala Harris, I think she's like probably the worst. But this guy, he put a noose around his neck. I can't.
Oh, it's just so bad. Ugh, just like, what is your platform? Like, what are you actually standing up for? You can't defend your own platform. So you're hoping that your base is so ignorant and not well-read and not aware of the issues plaguing their own state that they will be so emotionally inclined to vote for you, because you can't stand on your own convictions.
Mm-hmm.
You have to play theatrics. Like, it's embarrassing, it's insulting, and it's just backwards. It's so backwards. No one's getting hung anymore. It doesn't happen.
Well, there's Jussie Smollett. Oh, never mind. That didn't happen.
That child.
Well, there's Bubba Wallace. Oh, shoot. That didn't happen either. Didn't happen. Shoot.
Like, you want to be a victim that bad that you have to put the noose around your own neck.
The lack of self-respect is just amazing. And it's just an embarrassment. And I don't know who helped him make that it gives me the kind of the same vibes as like during the Youngkin campaign when they had like some Democrats got together and dressed up like white supremacists or whatever, holding tiki torches, and they stood by a Youngkin bus to, I guess, to be like, oh, these are the kind of people who support Youngkin. And some journalists or whatever try to be like, oh, look at this. And then people start investigating, like, okay, this person works for Democrats, this person works for Democrats. And one of the people in the pictures, there's two white guys, a white woman, and a black guy. And I'm like, sweetheart, how much did they pay you for you to stand here and pose as a white supremacist?
Let me know if you can. AirPods just died.
Okay, sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Well, I got one more video, short. It's kind of funny. I really like this lady in her little church videos.
Oh Lord.
Relationship with God don't mean the Bible is true.
Let me back
I
up.
had a relationship with God don't mean the Bible is true. What kind of relationship was that? Huh? A one night stand? Did you meet God at some drive through and got mad because you couldn't have it your way?
She has a ton of those.
It's a one night stand. No, it's just there's just, you know, that one preacher on TikTok, what's his name, Brendan Robertson or Brandon?
I think it's Brandon.
Yeah, that demon right there. I said what I said. Yeah, that's an agent of Satan. I don't care what anybody says. There are a lot of people who are trying to preach that the Bible is irrelevant, or trying to misconstrue the Bible so well. And it kind of goes back to the, the noose around the neck dude, and hoping that the people you're talking to aren't well read in the Bible. So having an ignorant audience, but that's hilarious. He's like, I have a relationship with God, but that doesn't mean the Bible's true. Okay, then who did you have a relationship with exactly? Who were you with? The God of the Bible? But you can't have it your way. I'm sorry. The Lord is not a drive-through. The Lord is not a library book. You can just check him out and then bring him back after 7 days. No. Either you believe the word of God or you don't. Either you believe the words that came out of his mouth and the words that came out of his mouth and on into the hands of the people who wrote it and onto paper, or you don't. You can't just pick and choose the pieces of God you like and then stick with those. No, you either want all of him or none at all. And the thing about God is, we always preach, God is love, and God is vengeful, and he is wrathful, and he plays no games. Vengeance is mine, says the Lord.
Yeah. He's a just God.
He's a just God. He is a just God. And a lot of people don't want to talk about that piece of him, in that, yes, he loves you and he cares for you and he will prosper you, but he will also strike you down and humble you if he has to.
Yeah.
And if you are maligning his name and, leading his people astray, his children, okay, you do that over there where the lightning's going to strike. I'm going to sit over here and watch and learn my lesson.
Did you see Fox News did a segment about a family that had a trans kid, Rylan, and the mother? Apparently, you have. So those who haven't, what I want to mention. So there was they said that their.
I can hear you. I'll be right back.
Okay, they said that their their biological daughter, who they believe now is their son, knew that she was a boy before she could even talk. They started transitioning him, like, so I guess socially at 5, and so now Rylander is 14. And apparently the mother wrote a book about it when the child was like 6. So it's like, was it like Munchausen's disease or something like that?
Munchausen by proxy.
Yeah, that's probably what this is. But she wrote a book about it, like when the kid was like still like 6 and stuff. So anyway, she said in the interview that that she has her faith, and that God, if made her, we're made in his image, and wonderfully fearfully made, or something like that, and so this is how her child's supposed to be, because that's how they are. And I'm just like, that is not how can you misconstrue the word like that? It's so crazy. The Bible is not a pro you book, it is a pro submit to him book. Jesus literally, he said, if you want to come after me and follow me, you have to deny yourself. You have to deny yourself. So twisting and being like, no, God, I'm all perfect. Like you're so good at what you do. I'm just, like, I don't have to humble myself at all. I don't have to lay myself on the cross at all, because I was perfect this way. No, that's not at all. Nothing in the book is like that. Nothing. Nothing.
Like, he's Jesus, like you said, Jesus says, you must die to yourself. That means you must lay down everything, your life, your ideologies, your beliefs, your convictions, your future, your direction, your plans. You lay down everything at his feet and you follow him. That means you literally deny yourself. Did we not learn anything from Jazz Jennings? Did we not learn anything? That child is miserable. Okay, that child is overweight and miserable. And that child is probably never going to have a normal, healthy sex life, because Jazz Jennings went on puberty blockers when she was 11 or 12 years old. So before she even really started they literally started her on puberty blockers before she could start puberty, to literally block puberty. Mm-hmm. And people are under this impression that, oh, well, it just pauses puberty. Puberty is not a disease. Puberty is a natural stage of human development. It's uncomfortable as it is, because it's uncomfortable. Okay, your body is literally going through all these crazy, massive changes in a very short period of time. Yeah. It is necessary for your body to develop properly into the adult form. You need these hormones, these exchange and balance of hormones, and these changes in order for your body to properly develop. Your muscles, your bones, your brain. And most importantly, and people want to act like it's not important, but the sexual part of all of that jazz. And because Jazz Jennings never allowed her body to properly develop, they took away the testosterone and put Jazz Jennings on estrogen, so she was getting all these female sexual characteristics, but the characteristics she was born with never properly developed. So her body is underdeveloped. And when it came time to get, bottom surgery, there was nothing to work with. Mm-hmm. So everything below the belt never developed properly, which means she has no sexual sensation at all. Yeah. Even with the removing and basically creating a surgical hole, because that's what a neo-vagina is. It's a surgical wound that, if you don't dilate every so often, will close up like a nose ring. So don't let anybody tell you, oh, it's just like a female vagina. No, if I leave my vagina alone for 7 days, it's perfectly fine.
It's still going to be there.
It's not the same. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I've read about someone who went through something like that, and they have a micro penis, and it doesn't work
because they use that material to create the vagina. And if you don't, your only option left is either to take skin grafts from even that doesn't work, because they'll use skin grafts in order to create a neo-penis. For a neo-vagina, if you don't have enough penile tissue, they use your colon. So congratulations. Yeah. You have a vagina that smells like an ass for the rest of your
life. They said they had a friend who used the colon, and they said it still very much smells like colon. And so
they don't tell them that, though.
I told my sister about this story, and she was like, I think we were watching Match Thing, and I turned to her and I said, yeah, they'll use a colon. And she just looked at disgusting. She's like, that sounds super gay.
And the thing is, like, they knew this. They know that in order to create a neo-vagina, they use penile tissue. And why do they know that? It's because they've been doing this on healthy adults. Adults that already grown men who already went through male puberty. So everything below the belt was fully developed the way it should be. So they had everything necessary in order to just turn things inside out. Whereas you take a child and you block their puberty so they don't fully develop. That's the problem, is they're basically treating these children like experiments. Yeah. If you love your child, the thing is, as a parent, your job is to create boundaries for your kid. Your job is to help them navigate the world. Your job is not to cause confusion or enable confusion. And your job is definitely not to stunt your child's growth or prohibit them from developing properly. And that's what puberty blockers does.
Yeah.
People act like, oh, well, it's reversible. No, there is no reversing the damage that your body has gone through because you didn't allow your bones and your muscles and your brain to properly develop. You are literally stuck in adolescence for the rest of your life. You cannot regrow that bone density. You cannot regrow that muscle issues you're gonna have the rest of your life. There are, studies of teen girls with osteoporosis because they decided to block their estrogen and just add in testosterone. As a female, your body's not supposed to, you're putting drugs into your body that your body is not supposed to have and your body doesn't need. It'd be one thing if you're a female and you're not producing enough testosterone, because we produce a healthy amount of testosterone. It'd be one thing if you're a female and you're not producing and then you're given testosterone to help boost that production. It's something else entirely to actually stop your body from doing what it's supposed to do and then trying to trick your body into doing something it's not naturally supposed to do. You can't trick DNA.
Yeah.
And now and they don't tell them this. They seem to think that, oh, well, once I transition, everything's good. No, baby, you are a big pharma pet for the rest of your life. You will be on hormones for the rest of your life because once you stop taking hormones, your body goes right back to doing exactly what it has been doing, but the damage has already been done. You have a lot of these detransitioners who don't realize that your voice changes quickly.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden they're dealing with, I sound like a boy. They weren't expecting that. I'm growing facial hair. I just didn't want to be a girl anymore. No one's telling them the amount of changes their body is going to go through and how quickly it's going to go through, and not telling them that there's no going back. Permanently altered your body and you can't go back.
Yeah, I saw one detransition story, and they were talking about how excited they were to get testosterone because they said they hated their voice, and it was a woman, and so she took the testosterone, and then they figured out eventually that all the stuff that the issues that they had wasn't really gender dysphoria. They had other things that they had to deal with, so they started detransitioning, and the voice is still mannish. And now she says the things that she regrets the most is this voice. And when I heard that, I don't think they converted back because of religion or anything like that, but I was like, that's just like the devil to like have something to torment you over something like your voice, and then to lose it and then be like, this is the thing that I regret the most. It's just so demonic. It's so vile and vicious, and it's evil what we're doing to these children. And I don't believe all these parents are doing these things to be evil to their kids, and they may feel like they're genuinely helping them, but parenthood is hard, and sometimes you have to put your foot down. Sometimes you have to be the bad guy, and there's and children are different, so sometimes you got to handle it differently. Like my sister has a friend, her daughter was claiming that she was trans, and so she just knew her child. She's like, I know this isn't for my kid. And she's on the left, so she would have loved you either kind of way, but she just knew her child. And so, but she knew that if she reacted and was like, no, that's not true, that she was just stubborn, and she would have been like, oh yes, I am, and would have caused this kind of big rift. So she was like, okay, you can cut your hair, wear your clothes how you want, but we don't have money. We're not going to give you hormones or anything like that. And so I think like a week or two, she's back. She was like, whatever. Like it was obviously a phase. But I'm just like, what would have happened if someone was like, your mom's not going to actually be supportive? Because there's stories like that where people are like, you should get divorced from your parents so you can get these puberty blockers.
Social media is the absolute devil. It is the antithesis. It is the worst thing to happen to a child-parent relationship is the internet. Social media is the worst, because there used to be safeguards in place when it came to transitioning. You had to actually get a diagnosis of gender identity disorder. Now it's called gender dysphoria, but gender identity disorder. You had to get an actual diagnosis and get a referral from a medical professional in order to start taking hormones. And if you wanted to get the surgery, you had to do two things. Number one, you had to qualify. because you had to get evaluated and qualified, because they do a mental health evaluation before you even go about getting the surgery. And if you don't pass, they don't do the surgery. And then you had to live life as the opposite sex for a year before you could even get the surgery, because you're making a life-altering decision. Your life is forever changed. If you do this, there's no going back. That's not being pushed enough. Once you do this, it's not like getting a nose piercing. It's not like getting, I can take this out and the hole will close up. I got my belly button pierced when I was like 16. That hole, I mean, it's still a little scar, but like, I'm fine. If I decide to permanently alter it's permanently altered. They're not being honest with these young people. But the problem is there's no money in safeguards. And if you have these safeguards in place, then a lot of these little kids who claim they're trans are never going to get hormones. They're never going to get surgery, because they won't even get past that first meeting with a psychiatrist or a psychologist. And then there's no money being made. There is a lot of money to be made on young women, because a lot of these are girls, young girls who are just hating themselves, who are dealing with their own trauma, their own insecurities. And right now, the way to cope is transitioning. Several years ago, the way to cope was cut yourself up, anorexia and all that jazz. But now the way to cope is to deny who you are, to completely ignore what you see in the mirror and be someone else, and then try to force the rest of the world to agree and participate. That's all it is right now. There are people who are genuinely dysphoric, and the only treatment available for them right now is either extensive therapy or transition. If they can just trick their brain into seeing the opposite sex, maybe the dysphoria will go away. And that's, cross your fingers and hope it works. But you have a lot of people who aren't dysphoric. They're not dysphoric. They're just unhappy with themselves. And when it's all said and done, they're still unhappy with themselves, and they don't understand why. It's because, baby, your issue wasn't your biological sex. The issue was you're depressed, you're anxious, you're bipolar.
Internalized misogyny,
internalized homophobia. Because you have a lot of, male to female trans people who are detransitioning and saying that the reason why they transition is because they had a hard time accepting that they were gay.
That just seems like a lot.
It is a lot. But, and I'm, if you want to make those changes to your body, I can't stop you, but I personally believe you should not be taken advantage of. There should be so many safeguards in place that at some point you might even change your mind and say, that's not what I want to do. That you've gotten through every single step and you are still adamant, this is the right decision. There should be so many safeguards in place before you permanently alter your body.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that there's women who have more trouble trying to get some kind of hysterectomy or the tube site or something than people going and making these big life-altering decisions.
People are taking it. You're dealing with that much mental distress. You deserve to be protected. You deserve to be protected and taken care of, and not taken advantage of by doctors who will just literally push hormones at you, not knowing, not even discussing with you what this can do to your body, other than say, oh, it'll give you secondary sex characteristics, or hey, it'll stop your period. Not telling you what that much testosterone will do to the female body, or what that much estrogen will do to the male body. You're still male and you're still female. I don't know. There's too much access. There should be less access for those who are genuinely dysphoric and they need that help, because trans is not who you are. It's what you do. It's what you've done. You have transitioned. You have made these changes. And trans has gotten away from an action, and now it's an identity, because it used to just be transsexual. And that was reserved for people who genuinely committed to the act of transitioning. But now everything's becoming an umbrella term. They've gotten rid of transsexual, and now it's transgender. So now that's, anyone whose gender identity doesn't align with their gender assigned at birth. So if you're non-binary, you can claim the trans identity. If you're like, oh, I'm gender queer, you can claim the trans identity. Where before, trans was a very exclusive word.
Yeah.
They had a very specific definition, whereas now the trans identity encompasses way too much.
Yeah. I don't know how they're gonna. I mean, I guess if some people start getting sued up the wazoo, maybe they could do something. But pharma is so involved with all this stuff, and then obviously the government is just psychotic right now with this stuff. And I don't. And maybe it's the pharma connection or something, because a lot of the stuff I don't understand, like why they push it so much, because it's the political blowback. There's just no advantage to it, like for
Money.
Biden and stuff.
There's so much money in it. Because, like I said, once you start that hormone journey, you are on big. Even if you detransition, you have caused permanent issues. You are going to be a big pharma baby for the rest of your life. You are going to be on some kind of medication. You are going to the issues that you have. They're going to have. You haven't even seen the extent.
But why? Biden's not long for this world. Like, what? just be frank. But so why go down this rabbit hole so far and fast? Like, I understand that he has like really, really radical people, and people think he's senile. He's maybe a little senile. He's not as senile as people pretend. He's like got his finger on some stuff, and he can comprehend probably the teleprompters that he's reading.
No, he can't.
You don't think at all he can?
No.
I think there's some comprehension there, but he's always been a politician who's been pretty spineless and will go with what's politically advantageous of him. So there's nothing like besides money. Like these are not good like policy stuff. There's people, black voters, who are like, oh, I didn't like Trump, but what the heck is this? Like, so they're gonna get wiped out, and it's just, is it worth it that much for the cash with the pharma with this stuff?
The reason why you're so confused is like, why are they doing? Is because you're conservative, and conservatives by nature are long-term thinkers. We're thinking 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years down the road. How does this action right now affect us 10 years from now? Liberals by their nature are not. That's one of the things that makes us conservatives. That's one of the things that makes us liberals. It's just the way we view time. Liberals are not long-term thinkers. They think in the short term. How does this benefit me right now? It benefits Leah Thomas right now because she won NCAA and it makes her happy. Not thinking that in the long run, this has made it harder for women in NCAA sports. Right now, it makes you happy to take testosterone, but you're not thinking of the possible health complications 10 years from now. You're not asking those difficult questions, Oh, well, Trump made me upset, so I voted for Biden. And look, Biden's going to undo everything Trump did. Not thinking about the actual policies that Trump put in place. And not actually thinking about, okay, well, unemployment, for instance, because that was a big miss on Trump's part as far as I'm concerned. Not honing that in. Oh, yay, it looks great. Give these people $600 a week for unemployment, which they should have given them unemployment because they shut down the government. But no one stopped to think that if we give them too much money, they'll never go back to work.
No,
they'll demand more.
The Republicans did actually say something about that, and the Democrats spun it like, oh, you're saying that people are lazy, and they're just like, no, people are smart. They will take their money and they will run. Yeah. And so they I mean, they signed it, they had to get it passed, but that's also like our fault too, because the media knows that they will, politicians know that the media will spin things a certain way. So the media is irresponsible, and our government is irresponsible because they care about how the media is going to portray them, because the voters are irresponsible, and they will listen to how the media flips stuff around. And they know that they'll go by the headlines. They won't do their own research. They won't think long term. And so if the media says, hey, Republicans don't want to give people money while the world is on fire, the Republicans are like, okay, at the end of the day, I think we're gonna have to vote for this, at least for now. So
yeah, but that's, they're not long-term thinkers. That's part of the problem. They're not, when they make a decision or a policy, they're thinking about the right now. They're not thinking, okay, how could this affect us in 5-10 years? So no one's thinking about these kids right now who are getting surgeries, who are getting puberty blockers, who are damaging their bodies. They're thinking about their happiness right now. They're not thinking that 5-10 years down the road, when they realize they're not dysphoric, when they realize they never, they were just going through something as kids, what the reaction is going to be, the consequences, the lawsuits, the damage to the LGBTQ. That's a whole subject I can go on right then and there, is just the implosion of the LGBTQ community. Like what you were talking about earlier with, hey, if you don't, back these gender identity policies, we will deny your kids money for lunch. It sounds like no, it was not a good policy at all, but it's like, oh, this sounds good right now. If I were LGBTQ, I would be pissed off to hear that, because now you've made me the bad guy. And a lot of these things happening right now. It looks good for the LGBT community right now. They're not thinking 5-10 years down the road where it all backfires. And we're right back where we were 20 years ago, and the LGBT community is the enemy. All those roads you paved, all the headway that you made is about to go down the toilet because you let straight people with identity issues into your club. I said what I said. You should have gatekeeped more. You should have gatekeeped harder. What is your sexual orientation? Is it something other than straight? Nope.
Yeah, they made a mistake, and I think a lot of people at least know that, because the trans is like the thing they protect the most, and
they should have just stuck with transsexual. Just let them be the exception to the sexual orientation rule. Let that they should have left it that, and they should have left it at transsexual. They should never have changed it to transgender. They should have never added the rest of the alphabet soup. Just LGBT,
demisexuals, and all this kind of other
straight
stuff.
People that want to be hoes but want to call it something legitimate. Okay, you're a nasty. You're a hoe. That's all that means. Don't get me started. It's that's all it is. Straight people who want validation. They want to be included in something, but they want to be something other than a cis-het white male. Oh, well, I'm a phrasexual. You're a hoe. That's basically what that means. Well, I'm a demisexual. Okay, so you're only sexually attracted to people that you have a connection with. No, you're not. That's not true. I'm sorry. In the whole human history, there's no way. I see a man on TikTok and I'm like, I want to have his babies. I don't know that man from Adam. It happens. We're human beings. That's literally how human nature works, and how we develop relationships and how we procreate. It's like we see something, we want that, then we get to know that. We think, oh, maybe not so much. Or it's like, you know what? I'm okay with red flags. I like the color red. It's like those decisions that get made. But, oh, I'm only sexually attracted to people that I have a deep connection with. Lies. You just want to be special. You just want a cute little colored flag.
Or
you just want to be
maybe there's somebody who they weren't too cute or something. Then you get to know them, personality, etc. But that's just like healthy kind of boundaries. Like you really don't need a flag for that. Actually, someone mentioned that in a conversation. I was on a live with a friend, and we were talking about purity culture, actually. And so someone jumped on there, and it was a gay guy, and he mentioned demisexual. I'm like, oh, this is about to go left. And so it was pretty funny because someone in the comments had asked, it was Becca asked about, did we think that homosexuals were like particularly promiscuous? And I'm like, I mean, that's the perception. I'm like, but that's not something, I guess, that normally people assume, but what that perception is usually given off by homosexuals. And so it was other Christina. I don't, not the medic Christina, but the teacher Christina. I don't know if I can't think of her TikTok name, but her real name is also Christina. But and Christina agreed. And so this gay guy got on there, and then he starts talking about how he thinks it's toxic that people use terms like purity culture, because it insinuates if you're not a virgin or if you're sleeping around, then you're impure. And I'm like, well, I'm a Christian. You're sinning. I do believe that's impure, and that is wrong. You're doing something wrong. They're like, I like to sleep around. I'm never going to get married, etc. I'm like, okay, well, I mean, you're a whore. And then they got so mad because I said that. And I'm like, well, no, I said you're a slut. That's what I said. And they're like, you're saying it's derogatory. I'm like, it's descriptive. I'm like, that's an accurate way to describe you. Like, you're coming on here bragging. And I'm like, I just want everyone to know that he just proved the thing about, oh my God, gay people coming on and wanting to be promiscuous. I'm not saying that's not everybody, whatever, but he's like, monogamy is not our thing, and etc. Like, just went ham on it. And they got so mad because I called him a slut. And I'm just like, why are you offended? That's what you're bragging about. Like, that's what people had slut walks in 2016. I thought we were kind of beyond that. Like,
it's like, if you're proud of it, why are you so ashamed? Why are you so angry? Are you basically saying that you know that what you're doing is wrong, but you don't like being called out about it? That's what I think.
I guess when he got off, that's what the other Christina said. Like, maybe it's that people in the comments like, is that conviction hitting? I'm just like, and then the people were like, it was because it was derogatory. I'm like, no, it was accurate, and you're upset that it's accurate. If someone was like, hey, Christina, you're fat, I'm like, I could choose to be offended by that, but it's just kind of evident. Like, it's just like, we all have eyes, don't we? Like, so, like, if you say that, what does it matter? I can choose to be upset about it, or I can let that roll off my back, or I can do something and change my life about it. But like, you just saying things outright that is true and being upset about it what does it matter where the source is coming from? Especially since you chose to jump on someone's live when their topic is like purity culture. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
It's ridiculous. But yeah, like all those extra identity. I'm phrasexual, I'm demisexual. These aren't real sexual orientations. Sexual orientation is about sex. It's about male, female, sex. What you're talking about are preferences. You prefer to be with people, you prefer non-monogamous relationships. You prefer to only be with people with whom you have a deep connection with. That's not a sexual orientation. That's a lifestyle choice. Okay, the whole gay community has been trying to get away from the idea that they are a lifestyle choice, and now you're bringing lifestyle choices into the fold.
Did you see there's a breakdown of like different asexuals? I do not remember all the terms and whatever, but there's like asexual because of like trauma, asexual because of not trauma. And I'm like, you need a flag to announce your trauma? It just was all very strange to me.
That's not a sexual orientation either. That's a trauma response. That's a trauma response or a medical condition. Okay, that is not a... The gay community for however many years has been trying to get away from the idea, because what have Christians have been saying for the last however many years about the gay community? That it's a lifestyle choice, that it's a trauma response, or that it's a medical problem. And the LGBT people have done a great job of getting away from that, and at least getting Christians to understand, you know what, maybe you were born this way, but even Christians saying, you know, possibly you were born this way, but that doesn't refute the fact that this might be a sin issue. You know, we've gotten away from some of the more radical ideas that it's a lifestyle choice. Well, not that radical. But now you've invited people into your club who want to be recognized for their medical conditions and their trauma responses and their lifestyle choices.
They made a mistake.
From the outside looking in, it's confusing as hell. Like, we just got... Like, we were good. We got to it. It was a rough late 90s, early 2000s. Okay, between, you know, Christian conservatives and the LGBT community. It was rough. We got to a point, I wouldn't say where we're cool, copacetic, no, pinky swear. It was just, we can coexist. We can be in the same place and not care, because that was the whole point. As the LGBT is like, I just want to exist and live my life and not be bothered. And now you've got a whole new class of idiots who want to be bothered. You worked so hard to not be bothered, and now you've let people in who all they want to do is be bothered. All they want to do is be validated. All they want is strangers to approve of them, to see them. I'm sorry. Okay, I can't see you the way you see you. When I see people, the first thing I try to look for are pieces of myself in them. That's just how it all works. I can't see you the way you see you. And you have a whole class of people going into the gay community who are like, please see me the way I want to be seen. When years ago, the gay people was like, just look at me and see a whole person. That's no different than you.
Yeah.
Can you see me and you? See how we're not that different. No, see how different I am. Notice my blue hair and the fact that I go by they, them. Call me a demon self. Like
The issue,
you did this to yourself, LGBTQ. I
the
swear.
problem when you start getting everybody to kind of do the group think or grouping, someone always takes advantage of it politically. There's people who just want to live their life and they just want to get married, but people are like slippery slope, and people did discover like slippery slope. Like you have the guy in Colorado with a cake masterpiece cake shop or something who's been to like court like twice, over people who just didn't want to go to another bakery or something like that. So they target these people to get these cases through and to affect change, but sometimes just to really, I think, to punish folks as well. There was another story where there was somebody who was like a florist, and they wanted to sue them because she wouldn't do their wedding, and this was a customer. They were customers, so they were coming to buy flowers, but she just wouldn't do it for the wedding. And at first she said it seemed like they understood or whatever. The next thing you know, there's a lawsuit. So one day I was watching like the coverage of it, and I was looking at a YouTube video, and someone in the comments was like, well, I think the real problem is that she was tolerant of them, but she wouldn't accept them. And I'm like, you're giving away the plot. You're giving away the plot. But it's similar with Black people, like the guy with the noose, and people want independence. They want to be able to be masters of their own destiny, and people are like, no, we can't have that, because if we can put them under our thumb and make them some kind of victim and always have something to fight for, they are really good political tools for us. So LGBT is the big tool that they're using. Black people will always be a tool that they will use, but it's really, really annoying.
I'm just waiting for that moment. I truly believe there's going to be this moment sometime in the future when the elder LGBTs are going to wake up and realize, you know what? I feel like the Christian conservatives, we're all on the same side. We could fight this thing together.
I saw a TikTok about that the other day. Someone was like, the Christians were right.
Because we're long-term thinkers. Because it's like, if we allow this, there's going to be a slippery slope. And here we all sliding down into the mud. They were right.
To drag time, story hour, it's not going to look itself, folks. Yeah.
That's a whole separate live, Christina. Okay.
I'm sorry.
We don't have time.
We don't have. I'm sorry for the trigger. Yeah, your AirPods died. You've charged them back up. So this we were like going 2.5 hours. So we can go ahead and start to close it down. But
don't get me started. Oh, I will go. Nothing upsets me more than when we don't protect children. I think maybe working in daycare, kind of just seeing how precious. Anyway, no, it's 2.5 hours. I still haven't eaten dinner, and I want ice cream. And nope, another live. We'll have to plan something, another live, and the conversation we can have. Yep, I'm gonna be good.
Okay. Okay. So where all can people find you?
Oh God, everywhere. I'm on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. The Twitter handle is just ThisIsSavvy 1, number 1. ThisIsSavvy 1. Substack. I just started a Substack. I haven't announced it on TikTok yet. I've kind of done a soft launch with my Instagram followers, because that's only 70,000 people there, just to kind of get a feel for the experience and just kind of see what numbers look like before I decide to unleash it onto TikTok, and then it blows up and it's like, oh crap, here we go. Podcast, it's called Sellout. I'm actually going to be changing the name soon, kind of rebranding it a little bit. Is that it? YouTube. You don't go to my YouTube. You can just see old videos. TikTok. Just go to my TikTok and go to the link in my bio, and all the things are there.
You don't have a website yet?
Not an actual website. I think I'm using Substack as my website for right now. I wouldn't know what to do with a web. No, the last thing I need is a website for me to click a link, and then the first thing I see is my face. It's bad enough I have to open up TikTok and there's my face.
That's what other people do, though. They'll go and they'll see your face. They want to see your face. So
it is so weird.
Girl, you gotta get over that. We've had this conversation before.
We have. It's always gonna be very weird because it's me, and it's like I'm just me. I'm just me. I'm not.
That's good. That's good. People like that. There's people who get a little bit of fame and they become a monster like instantly. And I've seen it even with like people in politics. They get a little bit of like notoriety and then they have like a huge head. And then they don't even win. And then, but
yeah.
So it's good when you have people who are still down to earth and they are still themselves and still humble. But
I recognize that my voice is important to people. I don't get it. Doesn't make sense to me, but I understand that it is to people. And so if I want to remain effective, I need to remain humble and down to earth. And then just not let it, it's hard to not let it get to your head. It's hard. So there are times where I step back. I'm not posting anything on TikTok for a couple days or on Instagram for a couple days and just trying to remember, you're Savannah, you're a dork, you're awkward, and you can't cook. Just basic, normal Savannah things. Cook? I do just enough to feed myself. Okay, I can feed myself. I keep myself fed. But if the neighborhood were starving and I was the only one with a working kitchen, we would all just die.
That's unfortunate. For the neighborhood, anyway. It's good you can feed yourself.
I can take care of me. I can keep me alive.
At least there's that. Well, guys, please go to blacktnews.com. Check out different content on the website, different articles, different merchandise. If you like Black Tea News, you can always give a little something to blacktnews.com/donate. I'm very grateful to have Savvy on tonight, and haven't done a TikTok thing in a while, so glad to have you back. And I was trying to get also Party Logic on here too, like at the same time, but she had like an event or something. She was like out of town, but I'll have to just have her back at a separate time. I really like her too. But
I love Becco.
I wanted to get back, especially it was so funny because last night we had an event at my church. My mom is super introverted, and so we talked her into like giving a Q&A. She's raised 7 kids, pastor's wife. People wanted to hear from her, so I did the Q&A, asking the questions and stuff. And so afterwards, I guess they just expected I would do something today for my birthday, but I just was like, well, let's go out to eat. I was hungry, hadn't eaten, dinner and stuff, so we went out afterwards. But when I was like, yeah, I have a live on Saturday, my sister was like, I saw. I'm like, I guess that what's the big deal? And they're like, I just thought we were doing something for your birthday, and did you plan a live? I'm just like, I'm sorry, I made plans. So I guess they felt like I traded you for them, or I don't know. But
hey, it's our birthday weekend. It is what it is.
Yeah, so thank you guys for watching, and you can join me Monday at 4 p.m. I'm gonna try to work out to have a pretty very relevant guest. We'll see what breaks out. But you guys can check out my Facebook page, my Twitter page, TikTok. I'll have announcements on there. But see you Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time for Black Tea News.